Jasmine Bell stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down the soft green dress she hadn't worn in over a year. At 28, she still had the same nervous habit of biting her lower lip that she'd had since high school. Her dark curls framed a face that looked more tired than it should for someone her age. You promised. One dinner. As if 4 years together deserved nothing more than a single word. That's all. This is a mistake, she said to her reflection. I'm not ready. It contained all the poems she'd written during the 4 years she'd spent with Mark, and all the ones she'd written since he'd walked out 6 months ago without even saying goodbye. A sudden rainstorm had slowed traffic to a crawl, and by the time Jasmine found parking near the Italian restaurant, she was already 15 minutes late. Just an empty apartment and a note that said, "I need space." The phone on her bed buzzed with a text. It was her best friend, Tanya. Classical music played quietly in the background. It was exactly the kind of place Mark would have hated. Too quiet, too romantic. Don't you dare back out, Jazz. The rain and the traffic were terrible. When words failed her in conversation, she could always find them on the page. He had the kindest eyes she'd ever seen, deep blue and somehow both sad and warm at the same time. He wasn't what she had expected for a blind date. No cocky smile, no obvious once-over with his eyes. I was beginning to think you might not come. Jasmine sighed and picked up the small leather-bound notebook from her nightstand. Her mascara had smudged slightly, giving her a slightly disheveled look. But there was nothing showy about him. If anything, he seemed almost uncomfortable with his own polish. She tried to fix it, but only made it worse. Space. Brian, Tanya's husband, he's the one who set this up, right? It's nice to meet you, Jasmine. Just a guy eating alone who now has unexpected company. She slipped the notebook into her purse. Poetry had always been her safety blanket. One dinner, she repeated to herself. I can do this. Tanya had mentioned that her husband's friend from college was newly single and looking to meet someone genuine. But this is a much better turn of events, and I'm very glad you sat at the wrong table tonight. The Barolo you ordered, sir, he said, presenting the bottle to Gray. But something about the way he looked at her, like he was seeing something valuable, something worth his time, made her stay. Business management? That sounds deliberately vague. I always have. She traced the rim of her wineglass. Actually, I write a little too. Poetry, mostly. His eyes were focused entirely on her, as if her answer about a small bookstore job was the most important thing he would hear all day. The drive from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. took longer than expected. Reading Harbor. I've been there for about 5 years now. She opened to a page she'd written just a week ago. But I understand if it's too personal. But first dinner conversations are never about work, are they? They're about finding out who someone really is. He leaned forward slightly. So who is Jasmine? I think there might be some confusion, but... He smiled, a small, crooked smile that transformed his serious face. Maybe we can sort it out over a glass of wine, unless you need to find your actual date. She spotted him immediately, a tall man with broad shoulders and dark hair that curled slightly at his temples. He was checking his watch and glancing toward the door. Great first impression, she muttered, checking her makeup in the rearview mirror. The restaurant, Bella Notte, was smaller than she expected. Soft lighting cast a warm glow over the intimate tables. Jasmine scanned the room nervously. Tanya had only told her that her date would be wearing a blue blazer and sitting at a table for two near the window. For a terrible moment, she thought he was trying to find a polite response. That's where life happens, isn't it? Taking a deep breath, Jasmine walked over, clutching her purse tightly. I wrote this after walking through Patterson Park last week. Hi, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry I'm late. That's exactly what I was trying to say. The man looked up, and Jasmine felt her breath catch. Nothing I do is ever the right thing or enough. It's always about the family legacy, never about what I want. No problem at all, he said, standing quickly. Gray told her about growing up in a family where expectations were set before he could walk. Jasmine shared stories about her mother, a woman who had raised her alone but always seemed to be looking past her for something better. There was something in his voice, a gentleness, maybe even a hint of nervousness, that immediately put Jasmine at ease. There was none of the performance of a typical first date, no careful censoring of her thoughts. "I'm Jasmine," she said, extending her hand. He took it, his grip firm but not overpowering. "Gray," he said. As she sat down, she noticed his suit was expertly tailored, his watch obviously expensive. "So," she started, unfolding her napkin, "how do you know Brian?" Gray hesitated, his brow furrowing slightly. "Brian?" Of course. She'd been right the first time. This was too good to be true. Jasmine felt the first flutter of confusion. Before Gray could answer, the waiter arrived with a bottle of wine. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the night air was cold against her flushed skin. "Thank you," Gray said, then turned his attention back to Jasmine. Of course, this had all been some kind of game or pity. Jasmine should have been embarrassed. She should have apologized and left immediately to find the right table. "I guess one glass wouldn't hurt," she said, surprising herself. "I'm already late anyway." Gray's smile widened, revealing a small dimple in his right cheek. "I promise I'm not a serial killer." The waiter poured them each a glass of wine, and Jasmine took a sip. It was rich and smooth, clearly expensive. "So if you're not my blind date," she said, her confidence growing slightly, "who are you, Gray?" "It's a business dinner, not a date." "This was the most real conversation I've had in years," he said. "Please, can we forget how we met and try again?" "Just a man who was planning a quiet dinner," he said. "I don't even know your last name." "These dinners are arranged." For a brief moment, she allowed herself to remember how it felt to be seen by him, to be heard. Then she started the engine and drove away, blinking back tears. "Or was I just an amusing distraction before your business dinner?" "They're not real." There was something guarded about his answer that intrigued her. "That's not much of an introduction." "You're right," he admitted. "Let me try again. I'm 30 years old. I work in business management. I have a dog named Edison." Jasmine laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't experienced in months. She didn't see him call someone and give instructions. She didn't know that as she drove back to Baltimore, thinking this was the end of a brief encounter. Gray was already planning how to find her again. "It is," he admitted. The direct question caught her off guard. She hesitated. "I work at a bookstore in Baltimore." "And do you like books, or is it just a job?" "It wasn't my date at all. I sat at the wrong table." "I love books," Martha asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. Inside was a small, beautifully bound book of blank pages and a note that simply read, "For your poetry. Because the world needs more words about the spaces. How was the big date?" "Poetry?" His eyebrows raised, genuine interest crossing his face. "Would you share some with me?" Jasmine felt her cheeks flush. Mark had never once asked to hear her poetry. "Oh, I couldn't. It's not very good." "I doubt that," Gray said. "And I'm never dating again. I'm going to die alone with 50 cats and my unpublished poems." "Jasmine!" There was a sincerity in his voice that made Jasmine reach for her notebook before she could talk herself out of it. "That's either the most embarrassing thing I've ever heard or the start of a great story." "Just a few lines," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Gray nodded encouragingly. Jasmine cleared her throat and read, "Morning light filters through half-empty branches. I am learning to love the spaces between things, the pause between heartbeats, the silence between words, the moment between ending and beginning again." When she looked up, Gray was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That's beautiful," he said finally, his voice low. "The spaces between things." Jasmine felt something shift inside her chest. Not the frantic flutter of attraction, but something steadier, a quiet recognition. "Yes," she said. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of conversation. "She loved me," Jasmine explained, "but it always felt conditional, like I was never quite enough." Gray nodded, understanding in his eyes. "My father's the same way." "And what do you want?" Jasmine asked. Gray looked at her for a long moment. "Authenticity," he said finally. "Real connections, not people who want something from me." The waiter had come and gone, their pasta dishes had been eaten, and they were on their second glass of wine when Jasmine realized how comfortable she felt. I should probably go to the restroom, she said, suddenly aware of how long they'd been talking. I'll be right back. As she stood, Gray rose as well, an old-fashioned courtesy that made her smile. In the restroom, Jasmine stared at her reflection. Her eyes looked brighter than they had in months. She was smiling without realizing it. Get a grip, she told herself. This isn't even a real date. He's just being nice. But as she reapplied her lipstick, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, this mistake was the best thing that had happened to her in a long time. That feeling lasted exactly as long as it took her to return to the dining room. As she approached their table, she saw Gray stand up again. But this time, it was for a tall, elegant blonde woman in a red dress who was taking the seat Jasmine had just vacated. Jasmine froze, watching as the woman leaned across the table and kissed Gray's cheek familiarly. She turned quickly, hoping to escape before he saw her, but her purse knocked against a waiter's tray, sending a glass crashing to the floor. Everyone turned to look, including Gray. Their eyes met across the room, and Jasmine saw the moment of panic cross his face. Without thinking, she hurried toward the exit, pushing past a confused host. "Jasmine, wait!" Gray's voice called from behind her. She kept walking, humiliation burning through her. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Of course he already had a date. "Jasmine, please." His hand touched her shoulder gently. She spun around, anger replacing embarrassment. "Don't touch me," she said. "Just go back to your real date." "It's not what you think," Gray said, his eyes pleading. "That's Vanessa." "Right," Jasmine laughed bitterly. "A business dinner with a woman who kisses you and wears a dress like that. I'm not an idiot." "No, you're not," he agreed. "But I'm not lying to you. Vanessa is my father's business partner's daughter." "And what was this?" Jasmine asked, gesturing between them. "Was this real?" Gray ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. The sincerity in his voice almost made her waver. Almost. "I don't do second chances anymore," she said quietly. "I've been second choice before, never again." She turned and walked toward her car, each step feeling heavier than the last. He called after her. She didn't turn around, but she called back, "It's better that way." As she got into her car, she saw him standing on the sidewalk, watching her. She didn't see him take out his phone, because for the first time in his life, Grayson Miles, heir to the Miles industrial fortune, had met someone who had no idea who he was, and who had made him feel like himself. When Jasmine arrived at Reading Harbor Bookstore the next morning, her boss Martha was already arranging a new display of poetry collections. "So?" Jasmine hung up her coat and forced a smile. Martha's mouth fell open. "You didn't. What happened?" "We talked for 2 hours before I realized my mistake," Jasmine admitted, "and then his real date showed up." "Oh, honey," Martha said, patting Jasmine's arm. "It's the most embarrassing thing," Jasmine confirmed. Martha laughed. "You're allergic to cats? Fine, 50 goldfish, tea." The bell above the door chimed, and they both turned to see a delivery man carrying a small package. "Delivery for Jasmine Bell?" Jasmine frowned. "That's me, but I didn't order anything." She signed for the package and brought it behind the counter. Between things. "Gray." Martha peered over her shoulder. "Who's Gray?" Jasmine stared at the note, her heart racing. "The wrong table," she whispered. "Well," Martha said with a knowing smile, "maybe it was the right table after all." Jasmine tucked the note into her pocket, not sure whether to be touched or troubled that he had somehow found out where she worked. And her last name. The bell chimed again, and this time it was a young man carrying a single white rose. "Jasmine Bell?" he asked. Martha nudged her. "Popular today, aren't you? Here's my number." Jasmine accepted the rose, which came with another note. "Dinner again, my treat. No surprise guests this time, I promise." At the bottom was a phone number and the initial G. "Are you going to call him?" Martha asked, clearly invested now. Jasmine twirled the rose between her fingers. "I don't know," she said honestly. "There's something about him that's different, but also something he's not telling me." "Isn't that true of everyone at first?" Martha pointed out. "We all have our secrets. Only you would accidentally go on a date with the wrong guy." Was he at least cute? What happened? Brian's friend said you never showed up last night. Before Jasmine could respond, her phone rang. It was Tanya. Jasmine winced. I'm so sorry. I accidentally sat at the wrong table and... You what? Tanya's laugh rang through the phone. Only you, Jas. The sunlight from outside silhouetted him at first, but Jasmine would have recognized that profile anywhere. Jasmine thought of Gray's kind eyes and the way he'd listened to her poetry, as if every word mattered. But this time something was different. He looked more polished, more confident, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. Throughout the morning, she found herself glancing at it, remembering the way Gray had looked at her when she'd read her poem. He was... She hesitated. He was interesting. Baltimore isn't that big, and there's only one bookstore called Reading Harbor. Why? You don't even know me. Interesting, Tanya pressed. That's all I get? I know you said no second chances, he continued. Why don't you take your lunch break now, dear? I can watch the store. But I'm hoping you might make an exception. I know you love books enough to make them your life's work. I know you listen with your whole self, not just your ears. He paused. And I know I want to know more. I'll tell you everything later, Jasmine promised. But right now I have to work. After hanging up, Jasmine placed the rose in a water glass near the register. And you're going to tell me who you really are, Gray. All of it. At lunch, she took out her phone and stared at his number. Her finger hovered over the call button. Just as she was about to press it, the door chimed again, and a tall figure stepped into the bookstore. As Jasmine slid into a booth by the window, she noticed how out of place Gray looked in his expensive suit. Several patrons glanced his way curiously. Gray. Hello, Jasmine, he said, his voice just as she remembered. Their tomato soup is the best in the city. How did you find me? She asked, her voice barely audible. And for your friend. Jasmine studied Gray's face, trying to read the secrets behind his blue eyes. My name is Grayson Miles, he said. Not just Gray. He smiled that same crooked smile that had captivated her the night before. And yet, that's it? Your name is longer than you said. That's your big secret. He walked toward her, stopping at a respectful distance. Jasmine felt her resolve weakening. You really don't know who I am, do you? This never happens to me, he said, more to himself than to her. He looked back at Jasmine, his expression softening. The Miles family owns Miles Industrial. We have factories in 12 states. Our headquarters is in D.C. I know enough, he said simply. I know you write poetry that makes people feel seen. She turned back to Grayson, who was looking at his simple lunch with amusement. What's so funny? The question was whether she was brave enough to let it. It's just been a while since I had something so... Jasmine meant it as a joke, but the way his eyes shifted told her she wasn't far off. So Miles Industrial. That still doesn't explain the woman from last night or why you were using a fake name. Normal. Our families have been trying to push us together for years. Just a man trying to find his own way, not his father's, not his family's legacy. Another arranged meeting. I got there early because I always do. Punctuality is a Miles family virtue. He said this with a hint of bitterness. And then you walked in, looking lost and beautiful in that green dress, and sat at my table instead of with whoever you were supposed to meet. His own. He stirred his soup absently. As for the name, And then I got to be just Gray for 2 wonderful hours. When people hear Grayson Miles and they don't see me, that was the most real conversation I've had in years. They see dollar signs or networking opportunities or society pages. Your poetry isn't mediocre. It's honest. And that's rarer than you think. He leaned forward. Do you know how many people I meet who are playing a role? Who say what they think I want to hear? You sat down at my table by mistake and gave me the one thing no one else has. Authenticity. You really don't care, do you? I still don't understand why you're here, Grayson. You could be having lunch with anyone. Models, actresses, society women. Why chase after a bookstore clerk who writes mediocre poetry? He repeated. There's no just about you, Jasmine Bell, Jasmine repeated, feeling like she was missing something important. Martha, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, suddenly appeared beside Jasmine, but the way he had listened to her poetry, the way he looked at her now. Before Jasmine could protest, Martha had practically pushed her out from behind the counter. "I've had enough of that to last a lifetime." At the door, he stopped. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, at least for lunch. Best meal I've had in a long time. Refreshing. You're—" She gestured at his expensive watch, his tailored suit. "All of this. And I'm just me. Finding things is one of my talents, remember?" "I can't just leave," Jasmine argued weakly. "Thursday at 7. I'll be there." There was something in his bearing that commanded respect without asking for it. Apparently, he's some kind of rich businessman. Money and privilege, she thought, had shaped him in ways he might not even realize. "Yes, you can," Martha insisted. "Go, talk. It's just lunch." "The moment you started talking about poetry and the bookstore, I knew this was a chance I might never get again, to meet someone who had no expectations of who I was supposed to be." There was Grayson, looking serious in a black tie at some charity event. The headline read, "Miles Heir Apparent. Will Grayson Miles modernize his father's empire?" Well, did Prince Charming explain himself. Men like that, they live in a different world. The man she'd met, first at the restaurant and then today at lunch, hadn't seemed like someone from a different world. He'd seemed lonely, genuine, hungry for real connection. Grayson Miles, of the DC Miles family. Jasmine. They're not just rich. They're old money rich, like founding fathers rich. Gray watched this exchange with amusement. "I promise to have her back in an hour," he told Martha. Jasmine grabbed her coat, her mind racing. This was crazy. She knew nothing about this man. There was an article about him in the Washington Post last month. Something about him taking over as CEO after his father steps down. Public ones, I mean. "I'm reading something new this week, actually." 1 hour, she agreed. His smile faltered slightly, but he nodded. "All of it," he promised. As they stepped outside into the crisp autumn air, Jasmine couldn't help but feel that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly predict. And as Gray gently guided her toward a small cafe across the street, his hand hovering near but not touching her back, she realized she was about to find out. The cafe across from Reading Harbor was a small, cozy place with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. "You come here often?" Gray asked, picking up a laminated menu with a slight smile. "Almost every day," Jasmine admitted. The waitress, Dottie, approached their table with a pot of coffee. "The usual, Jazz." Then she noticed Gray and raised an eyebrow. "I'll have whatever she's having," Gray said. After Dottie left, an awkward silence fell between them. "So," she finally said, "you promised to tell me who you really are." Gray ran a hand through his dark hair, a nervous gesture that made him seem suddenly younger. Jasmine waited for more, but when he didn't continue, she shook her head. A flash of discomfort crossed his face. "Should I?" Jasmine asked, genuinely confused. Grayson let out a short laugh. Jasmine's confusion didn't clear. "Okay, so your family has a business, that's nice." Grayson stared at her, then broke into genuine laughter. "Should I?" "No," Grayson said, his smile widening. "No, you shouldn't. And that's—" Before she could ask what he meant, Dottie returned with 2 bowls of tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles. "Enjoy, lovebirds," she said with a wink at Jasmine. "We're not—" Jasmine started to correct her, but Dottie was already gone. "Nothing," he said, picking up his spoon. "What do you usually eat? Caviar and champagne?" "Something like that," he admitted. Jasmine took a bite of her sandwich, studying him. Grayson sighed. "Vanessa Livingston is the daughter of my father's business partner." "And what should they see?" Jasmine asked softly. He looked up, something vulnerable in his gaze. The sincerity in his voice touched something in Jasmine. She knew what it was like to be seen as less than who you really were. "So last night," she prompted. "Last night I was supposed to have dinner with Vanessa, and you didn't correct me." "I couldn't," he admitted. Jasmine wasn't sure whether to be flattered or suspicious. "So you lied to me." "I let you believe what you wanted to believe," he corrected gently. They ate in silence for a few moments. Jasmine trying to process everything. "For what it's worth," Grayson finally said, "I meant what I said last night." Jasmine looked out the window at her bookstore across the street. His eyes flashed with something like anger. "Don't do that. Don't diminish yourself." Jasmine felt her cheeks flush. "You're giving me too much credit." "I don't think I'm giving you enough," he said simply. The intensity of his gaze made her look away. "Even if that's true, we live in different worlds, Grayson." "Just you?" Dottie appeared at their table again. "Everything taste okay?" "It's perfect," Grayson said, not taking his eyes off Jasmine. After Dottie left, Jasmine checked her watch. "I should get back soon. Martha will need her lunch break too." Grayson nodded, but made no move to call for the check. Instead, he asked, "Do you have poetry readings?" The question caught her off guard. "Sometimes. There's a small coffee house called Verses that hosts an open mic night every Thursday." She hesitated. "May I come?" he asked, his voice careful, as if afraid of pushing too far. Jasmine wanted to say no. She wanted to end whatever this was before it became something that could hurt her. "It starts at 7, she said, "but don't expect much. It's not exactly a glamorous scene." "I don't need glamour," he said. As they walked back to the bookstore, Grayson kept a respectful distance. "I haven't decided if it's a second chance yet," Jasmine said, but her tone was lighter than before. "Fair enough," he said with that crooked smile that made her heart do strange things. As he turned to leave, Jasmine called after him, "How will you get there? Do you even know where it is?" Grayson looked back, a mischievous glint in his eye. "I'll find it." She watched him walk down the street, noticing how people instinctively moved out of his way. Inside the bookstore, Martha was waiting with eager eyes. Jasmine hung up her coat. "His name is Grayson Miles." Martha's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" Jasmine asked, surprised. "I read things besides books, dear," Martha said dryly. Jasmine felt a chill run through her. Grayson hadn't mentioned any of that. "He can't be that important." Martha pulled out her phone and after a few taps turned the screen toward Jasmine. "Oh," Jasmine said softly. "Yeah, oh," Martha echoed. "Honey, be careful." Jasmine nodded, but her mind was spinning, just like her. Thursday evening came faster than Jasmine expected. She stood in front of her mirror, trying to decide what to wear for her reading. She'd chosen a poem about trust and second chances, written just yesterday after meeting Grayson for lunch. No complications, no disappointments, no inevitable ending when he realized she didn't fit into his world. Part of her hoped he wouldn't show up. It would be easier that way, nothing fancy but nice enough to show she'd made an effort. But another part, a part that had been silent since Mark left, hoped he would. She finally chose a simple blue dress and her grandmother's pearl earrings. Jasmine signed up for the reading and found a seat near the back, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. Verses was already crowded when she arrived. The small coffee house had a loyal following of local poets and poetry lovers. At 6:55, she glanced at the door for the 100th time. Still no Grayson. "He's not coming," she told herself, "and that's for the best." At exactly 7:00, the host stepped up to the microphone to welcome everyone, and just as he began speaking, the door opened. Gone was the power suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a grey sweater that made his eyes look even bluer. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it nervously. Grayson walked in, looking different than she'd ever seen him. He scanned the room, and when his eyes found hers, a smile broke across his face. Jasmine felt her heart skip a beat. Some were good, others less so, but Grayson listened to each one with the same focused attention he'd given Jasmine when she'd read to him at the restaurant. As he made his way toward her, people noticed him. His height, his good looks, the confident way he moved through the crowd. She looked out at the audience, finding Grayson's face in the dim light. It's called wrong tables and right timings. But there was none of the recognition she'd expected. Here, he was just another poetry lover. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, pointing to the empty chair beside her. "It is now," she said, trying to sound casual despite the fluttering in her chest. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she admitted. As he sat down, she caught a hint of his cologne, something subtle and expensive. I promised I would, he said simply, as if keeping promises was the most natural thing in the world. The first few poets took their turns at the microphone. When the host called Jasmine's name, Grayson gave her an encouraging smile. "You'll be amazing," he whispered. Jasmine walked to the microphone, her legs feeling unsteady. "This is something new," she said into the microphone. She took a deep breath and began, "I sat at the wrong table, with the right person. A mistake that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. You listened like someone who knows the value of spaces between words, of pauses between thoughts, of the breath before truth." She kept her eyes on Grayson, who wasn't clapping. He was simply watching her, his expression so full of something she couldn't name that it made her breath catch. They say timing is everything. When the event ended, Grayson helped her with her coat. "But what if wrong timing?" he asked. "Or is that too forward? Have you ever thought about publishing your poems? Is sometimes right?" Her apartment was only a few blocks away, but inviting him to walk her there felt like crossing a line. What if mistakes are actually doors? "I just meant that your work deserves to be read by more people." "I'm standing at the threshold now," Jasmine asked, a hint of frost in her voice. "With your connections and your money." "1 foot in, 1 foot out," Jasmine cut in. "Isn't that what people like you do? Fix things, make things happen with a phone call or a check?" "Wondering if trust—" "I don't know who you are, Grayson, that's the problem. You show up at my bookstore, you send me gifts, you come to my poetry reading looking like is a muscle that can heal after being torn." When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. "You have board meetings and charity galas, and women like Vanessa waiting for you." Back at her seat, he leaned close to whisper, "That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing it. What if I want your world more than mine?" "It was just something I was working on," she said, trying to downplay the fact that she'd written it about him, about them, whatever them might be. A streetlight cast a soft glow over them, catching the highlights in Grayson's dark hair. In that moment, Jasmine saw the loneliness behind his confident exterior, the yearning for something real. "See those spaces between things I wrote about?" They sat through the rest of the readings, occasionally exchanging whispered comments or appreciative nods. "Can I walk you home?" Jasmine hesitated. "I mean, if you want it to be." Not Grayson Miles, heir to Miles Industrial. Just a man who enjoys poetry and tomato soup and the way you see the world. "You can walk me partway," she compromised. Outside, the night was clear and cool. Stars peeked through the city's light pollution, and a half moon hung low in the sky. She knew she should, but instead she heard herself ask, "Why?" "You have an amazing gift," Grayson said as they walked. She tried to dismiss them, to remind herself that men like Grayson Miles were skilled at saying the right things. Jasmine laughed softly. "Every poet dreams of being published, but it's not that easy." "It could be," he said, his tone careful. When he saw her, he stood up, that now familiar smile lighting his face. Jasmine met Grayson at a small coffee shop near Patterson Park, her stomach fluttering with nerves. "The barista said you always get a vanilla latte. Just the right amount of stalkerish," she teased, taking a sip. It was perfect, exactly how she liked it. He told her about growing up as the only child of Harris and Miles, about the pressure to be perfect, about the loneliness of never knowing if people liked him for himself or for his family name. "It gives me space to just be a person, not a Miles." She stopped walking. "What does that mean?" Grayson seemed to realize his mistake. Ducks glided across the water, leaving ripples in their wake. Simple questions that revealed his genuine interest in her life. "And you could make that happen?" "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "I wouldn't presume to—" Then Grayson asked, "Can I ask about your family? You mentioned your mother the other night." "My father left when I was 3. I barely remember him. My mother raised me alone, but—" She paused, searching for the right words. "She always seemed like she was waiting for her real life to begin, like I was just a chapter she had to get through." "Wouldn't you?" The hurt in his eyes made her regret her words immediately, but she couldn't take them back. "Is that who you think I am?" he asked quietly. Jasmine felt something shift between them, a barrier lowering. Last I heard, she was in Florida with husband number 3. Jasmine sighed, suddenly tired. She glanced at the screen, not recognizing the number. I should take this. It might be work. Like what? He prompted when she trailed off. People leave. Cancer. What? A pause. I know we haven't been close, but I didn't want to face this alone. When? Why didn't you call sooner? She stood frozen, trying to process what she'd just heard. Cancer. It's what they do. Like someone who could belong in my world, she finished. But you don't. It's nothing, I mean, it's family stuff. I should handle it. Grayson stepped closer, his eyes intense. The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache. People don't just walk away from the kind of life you have. Some do, he said. Some try, at least. They had reached the corner where Jasmine had planned to say goodnight. Jasmine stiffened for a moment, then melted into his embrace, allowing herself to be held. I should go, she said, taking a step back. Jasmine, he said her name like a plea. Can I see you again? She should say no. Fear of losing someone who, despite their complicated relationship, was her only family. And beneath it all, confusion about Grayson Miles and the way he was breaking through walls she'd built so carefully after Mark. Because when I'm with you, I feel like myself. Just know I'm here if you need me. A car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating his face. Sunday, she said before she could change her mind. The bookstore is closed. We could go for a walk in Patterson Park. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Sunday, he agreed. What time? 10? We could get coffee first. It's a date, he said, then quickly corrected himself. Jasmine surprised herself by smiling. We'll see. As she turned to leave, Grayson called after her. Jasmine? She looked back. I meant what I said. Your poetry, it matters. You matter. The words followed her all the way home, echoing in her mind as she got ready for bed. But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he had meant every word. Sunday morning dawned clear and crisp, perfect weather for a walk in the park. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at a table by the window with 2 cups of coffee. I took a chance on your coffee order, he said, pushing 1 cup toward her. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. You asked about my coffee order. Too much? He asked, looking genuinely concerned. She should have found it intrusive. Instead, she found it oddly sweet. As they walked to the park, Grayson asked about her writing, about books she loved, about her favorite spots in Baltimore. In return, she asked about his. That's why I use gray sometimes, he explained, as they followed a winding path through the park. Is that why you didn't correct me that night at the restaurant? Jasmine asked. Because I saw you as just gray, he nodded. I know it was deceptive, but those 2 hours with you, it felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. They stopped at a bench overlooking a small pond. This is my favorite spot, Jasmine said, sitting down. I come here to write sometimes. Grayson sat beside her, close but not touching. I can see why, it's peaceful. They watched the ducks in companionable silence for a while. Jasmine tensed slightly. There's not much to tell. I'm sorry, Grayson said softly. We don't talk much anymore, Jasmine continued. That must be hard. Jasmine shrugged, trying to seem casual. You get used to it. Not everyone, Grayson said, his voice low. She turned to look at him, struck by the conviction in his tone. You say that now. I mean it. Their eyes held for a long moment. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Grayson nodded, giving her space. Hello? Jasmine answered. Jasmine, it's me. The voice was familiar, though it had been months since she'd heard it. Mom? Jasmine stood up, moving a few steps away from the bench. Is everything okay? No, not really. Her mother's voice sounded thin, strained. I'm at Johns Hopkins. The doctors, they found something. Jasmine felt the world tilt beneath her feet. I just found out yesterday. I'm having more tests tomorrow. Of course, Jasmine said automatically. I'll be there. Just tell me when. After getting the details and promising to visit the next day, Jasmine hung up. "Jasmine?" Grayson's voice came from behind her. "Is everything all right?" She turned to face him, her eyes wide with shock. "It's my mother. She's sick." Without hesitation, Grayson stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. "I'm so sorry," he murmured into her hair. "What can I do?" Jasmine pulled back slightly, suddenly aware of how intimate the moment had become. Grayson nodded, respecting her boundaries. "Of course, but if you need anything at all, I'm here." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Thank you." They walked back toward the park entrance in silence, Jasmine's mind racing with thoughts of her mother, of hospitals, of reconciliations that might come too late. At her car, Grayson hesitated. "I'd like to see you again, but I understand if now isn't a good time." Jasmine looked up at him, struck by how quickly he had become someone she wanted to turn to. It scared her, that feeling. "I need to focus on my mother right now," she said gently. "This is complicated." "I understand," Grayson said, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. He reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze before letting go. "Take care of yourself, Jasmine." As she drove home, Jasmine's emotions warred within her. Worry for her mother. She needed to focus on her mother now. Grayson, with all his complications and contradictions, would have to wait. But as she prepared for bed that night, her phone chimed with a text. "Thinking of you. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. G." Simple words, but they wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket, offering comfort when she needed it most. Johns Hopkins Hospital was a maze of corridors and waiting rooms. Jasmine sat beside her mother's bed, trying to process the doctor's words. Stage 3, treatment options, survival rates. At 54, she had always seemed eternally youthful, always chasing the next adventure, the next man, the next fresh start. Now she looked her age and more. Eleanor Bell looked smaller than Jasmine remembered, her once vibrant red hair now dull and streaked with grey. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. "It's not a death sentence," Eleanor said, attempting her usual bravado. "People beat cancer all the time." Jasmine nodded, trying to mirror her mother's optimism. "Of course they do, and you will too." A nurse came in to take vitals, and Jasmine stepped into the hallway to give them privacy. "Ms. Bell?" She opened her eyes to see a doctor approaching, clipboard in hand. "Yes? We believe a combination of surgery and chemotherapy offers the best chance, but the costs are significant. Does your mother have insurance? I wanted to discuss your mother's treatment plan with you. Her job at the bookstore barely covered her own modest expenses. How would she ever be able to help her mother? She didn't want his money. She didn't want to be one of those people who saw him as a resource rather than a person." Grayson. I don't know. We haven't been in close contact recently." Jasmine felt her stomach drop. "Well, there are payment plans available and possibly some assistance programs, but it would be good to sort that out soon. And I know you're not asking for money, but I might be able to help in other ways. My family has connections at Johns Hopkins. Let me make a few calls." Eleanor was asleep, the lines of worry momentarily smoothed from her face. The doctor's expression was sympathetic but professional. "I see, but I understand your concern. Let me just see what options might be available, okay? No strings attached." Grayson's calm, steady voice anchored her in a way she hadn't expected. After he left, Jasmine returned to her mother's room, her mind racing. Not just for this, but for being there. Jasmine sat beside her, taking out her phone to research cancer treatment costs. The numbers made her dizzy. "It's expensive. I don't know what to do." Before she could stop herself, she found herself texting Grayson. "My mother needs treatment." She hit send before she could think better of it, then immediately regretted it. She was about to send another text apologizing when her phone rang. She found herself smiling as she described Grayson's crooked smile and the way he listened when she read her poems. Stepping into the hallway again, she answered, "I shouldn't have texted you, I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." His voice was firm but gentle. "Where are you?" Johns Hopkins, but Grayson, I didn't mean to. We're testing a new combination of therapies that has shown promising results. The best part is that all costs are covered by the research grant. And rich from the sound of it. I know you didn't, he interrupted. They're very generous in their support of cancer research. Jasmine felt a mix of relief and unease. I don't want special treatment. It's not special treatment to make sure your mother gets the care she needs, Grayson said. Your mother's case is a perfect fit for our protocol. After she agreed, they talked for a few more minutes. I've been reviewing your case, and I believe you would be an excellent candidate for a clinical trial we're conducting on new treatment protocols for your type of cancer. On the other, it felt like exactly what she'd told Grayson she didn't want, his money fixing her problems. It's a miracle, she said, eyes bright with hope. Just when I thought I was out of options. Should she confront him, thank him, pretend she didn't know what he'd done? Thank you, she said finally. Always, he said simply. When she returned to her mother's room, Eleanor was awake and watching her with curious eyes. Who was that? She asked. Just a friend, Jasmine replied, sitting down again. Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. A special friend. You were smiling. Was I? Jasmine touched her cheek, surprised. Tell me about him, Eleanor said, adjusting her position in the bed. I could use a good distraction. Jasmine sat in her car, trying to sort through her feelings. Anger that he had intervened after she'd asked him not to. Relief that her mother would get treatment. And underneath it all, a growing warmth at the knowledge that he had cared enough to help. So Jasmine told her about the mix-up at the restaurant, about the poetry reading, about the walk in the park. He sounds lovely, Eleanor said when she finished. Jasmine frowned. That's not why I like him. But another part, a stronger part, wanted to see his face, to hear his voice, to feel that strange sense of belonging she felt in his presence. But you do like him, Eleanor noted with a knowing smile. Before Jasmine could respond, a nurse entered with a doctor Jasmine hadn't seen before. Mrs. Bell, the doctor said, her voice warm and professional. I'm Dr. Patel, and Martha had put Jasmine in charge of setting up the event space. Eleanor looked confused. Clinical trial? I don't understand. Grayson lived in a world where problems could be solved with a phone call. She lived in one where you struggled and scraped and made do. I'm sorry, but I'm swamped this morning. We have an author event at noon. It's a research study, Dr. Patel explained. You've been working non-stop since your mother went into the hospital. Take a break. And despite her fears, she was beginning to reach back. Jasmine felt a jolt of suspicion. All costs, just like that. Dr. Patel nodded. The trial is funded by the Miles Foundation. The Miles Foundation. Jasmine's heart raced. This was Grayson's doing. Several female customers turned to look as he walked past, but his gaze was fixed solely on Jasmine. The events of yesterday, her mother's diagnosis, the clinical trial, Grayson's intervention, hung in the air, unspoken. When did my mother become eligible for this trial? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. We review all new cancer patients for potential matches with ongoing studies, Dr. Patel said smoothly. I called the director of oncology, who happens to be a friend of my father's. I mentioned that Eleanor Bell was a patient and asked if there were any trials she might qualify for. He met Jasmine's eyes directly. I didn't demand anything. I didn't offer money, and I didn't ask for special treatment. I just opened a door. Your mother got in because she genuinely qualifies. Even strong independent bookstore clerks who write beautiful poetry. It sounded reasonable, but Jasmine knew better. Somehow, in the hour since she'd texted him, Grayson had arranged this. Eleanor was already asking questions about the treatment, clearly excited by this stroke of good fortune. Jasmine stayed silent, her emotions in turmoil. On one hand, this could save her mother's life. After the doctor left, Eleanor grabbed Jasmine's hand. Until then, she's staying with me. Jasmine sighed. It's an adjustment. We haven't lived together since I was 18. And I'm sorry if I overstepped. I've always handled things on my own, she explained. Since I was a teenager, really. My mother was always distracted. Jasmine shook her head. But she's trying in her way, and she's scared, though she won't admit it. With men, with her dreams of a different life, I learned to take care of myself. People rarely asked how she was really doing. They asked about her mother, about work, about practical matters, but not about her feelings. My mother and I have a complicated relationship, but she's my only family. The thought of losing her. He hesitated, then continued more softly. I couldn't bear to see you worried and not do something when I had the ability to help. Jasmine squeezed her mother's hand, unable to shatter that hope with her own complicated feelings. Yes, it is. That evening, as she drove home from the hospital, Jasmine's phone chimed with a text from Grayson. He was talking about everything, about being there for her, about being someone she could lean on. How's your mother doing? She pulled over to respond, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Mom, is everything okay? Finally, she typed, she's been accepted into a clinical trial, fully funded by the Miles Foundation. Jasmine was acutely aware of how easily his presence calmed the storm inside her. His response came quickly. That's wonderful news. The foundation funds many worthy research projects. Jasmine could almost see his careful expression, the way he was trying to give her space to accept help without feeling indebted. Was she really eligible? Or did you make it happen? She typed. A longer pause this time. Then, I made a call about the trial. Her acceptance was based on medical criteria. She genuinely qualifies. At least he was honest. Thank you, she finally wrote, but please don't do something like this again without talking to me first. I promise, came his reply. Can I see you tomorrow? Jasmine hesitated. Part of her wanted to create distance, to protect herself from falling any deeper into whatever this was becoming. Coffee at Reading Harbour, 10 a.m., she replied. His response was immediate. I'll be there. As she drove home, Jasmine thought about spaces, the spaces between people, between words, between worlds. The space between those worlds seemed vast, but somehow he had found a way to reach across it. Reading Harbour was unusually busy the next morning. A local author was scheduled for a signing later that day. He's here again, Martha whispered, nodding toward the door where Grayson had just entered, carrying 2 coffee cups. Jasmine's heart did that now familiar skip. He wore casual clothes again, dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes. Good morning, he said, placing one of the cups on the counter. Vanilla latte, extra hot. Thanks, she said, taking the cup. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he quickly masked it. Of course. I understand. Martha stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. Nonsense, I can handle the setup, Jasmine. Before Jasmine could protest, Martha was practically pushing her toward the small reading nook in the corner where 2 comfortable armchairs faced each other. 30 minutes, Martha insisted. That's an order from your boss. Grayson followed Jasmine to the chairs, his expression amused. I like her, he said quietly. She's meddling, Jasmine replied, but there was no real annoyance in her voice. As they sat down, an awkward silence fell between them. Finally, Jasmine said, I need to ask you something and I want an honest answer. Grayson nodded, his expression turning serious. Always. The clinical trial my mother got into, just how much did you influence that decision? He took a sip of his coffee, seeming to consider his words carefully. Jasmine studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. She found none. Thank you for being honest. I promised I would be, he said simply. The sincerity in his voice made Jasmine's irritation fade. And you're very good at it, Grayson said. But everyone needs help sometimes. A small smile tugged at Jasmine's lips. I'm trying to be mad at you, you're making it difficult. Good, he said, his own smile widening. That's my devious plan. They both laughed, the tension between them easing. How is your mother doing? Grayson asked after a moment. Better, I think. The trial starts next week. That must be challenging. You have no idea. She's already rearranged my kitchen cabinets and critiqued my boring wardrobe. Grayson reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. His touch was warm, comforting. And how are you doing? Really? The question, asked with such genuine concern, caught Jasmine off guard. She started, then paused, surprised to feel tears threatening. I'm overwhelmed, she admitted. Grayson squeezed her hand gently. You're not going to lose her. And you're not alone in this. The look in his eyes made it clear he wasn't just talking about her mother's illness. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still joined. "Jasmine, phone call." Martha's voice broke the moment. Reluctantly, Jasmine pulled her hand away. "I should get that. It might be the hospital." Grayson nodded. "Of course." At the counter, Martha handed her the store phone with a knowing smile. "It's Eleanor. She says it's urgent." Jasmine pressed the phone to her ear. "Everything's fine, darling," her mother said, her voice bright. "But the most extraordinary thing has happened. There's a man here at the apartment. He says he works for Grayson Miles. He's delivering a hospital bed, and new bedding, and some kind of special chair, and, oh, there's more arriving now. Some sort of electronic tablet." "Grayson." Jasmine closed her eyes, torn between gratitude and frustration. "Mum, I'll call you back." She hung up and turned to find Grayson standing nearby, looking slightly guilty. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice low. "I may have arranged for some home medical equipment," he admitted. But this is my mother, my home, my responsibility. I wanted to help. Just please talk to me first next time. Your apartment is small, and hospital beds aren't comfortable. There's also a tablet with access to streaming services, so she won't be bored during recovery." "I understand. I have a meeting in DC this afternoon anyway." He hesitated. "Would it be all right if I called you later? To check on your mother?" "And a special recliner designed for cancer patients that makes it easier to—" Jasmine cut him off. "We talked about this yesterday. You promised not to do things like this without talking to me first." She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. He had the grace to look genuinely contrite. "You're right. I'm sorry." "I know you did," she said, softening slightly. "Of course," he said quickly. "I'll have everything removed right away." He was trying to help in the only way he knew how, especially rich ones who've probably never had to consider such things before. Jasmine sighed, seeing the hurt beneath his carefully composed expression. "No, don't do that. The equipment will help her be comfortable. The hospital bed took up most of her living room, but it looked comfortable and high-tech." "Isn't this wonderful?" Eleanor said, gesturing around the room. "And that nice young man who delivered everything said it's all on loan, so we don't have to worry about returning it when I'm better. Then why does he look at you the way your father used to look at me? Before everything fell apart, I mean." The special recliner was positioned near the window where the light was best for reading, and the tablet was already set up with streaming services, e-books, and even some poetry collections. "I promise," he said, "no more surprises." But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of reservation that made Jasmine wonder what else he might have planned. "Don't let his money scare you off, Jasmine. Rich or poor, a good man is a good man." "I should get back to work," she said, gesturing to the growing activity in the store. Grayson nodded. Despite her frustration, Jasmine found herself nodding. "That would be nice. Well, he certainly knows how to treat a woman right. Unlike that last boy of yours, Mark, was it? The one who left without saying goodbye?" After he left, Martha sidled up beside her. "Trouble in paradise?" Jasmine shelved a stack of books with more force than necessary. He's used to fixing things. It was thoughtful, even if you should have asked first." "You're right, and I was wrong to step in without asking. It's just that I'm used to being able to fix problems. It's what I do at work, in my family. See a need, address it. I didn't stop to consider how it might make you feel. With money, with connections. And that's a problem because I appreciate that, and I know you were just trying to help. Because I don't want to be another thing he fixes," Jasmine said. "I want to be—" Jasmine was surprised. "Most people find it off-putting. Too strong-willed, too self-sufficient. I can tell by the look on your face. But I also need to respect your independence. It's one of the things I admire most about you, actually. Now you're just trying to get out of trouble." Martha patted her arm. "You want to be his equal. You've built a life on your own terms. You're talented, hardworking, caring. You're extraordinary, Jasmine. He moves in circles I've never even heard of. Sooner or later he'll realize I don't fit into that world. Yes, Jasmine agreed, relieved that someone understood. Exactly. The idea that Grayson might genuinely prefer her simple life, the bookstore, poetry readings, walks in the park, seemed impossible. And yet, wasn't that exactly what he'd been trying to tell her? Then tell him that, Martha said simply. Men aren't mind readers, dear. It was easy, comfortable, like they'd known each other for years instead of days. Jasmine thought about Martha's advice as she finished setting up for the author event. Maybe she was being too hard on Grayson. By the time she arrived home that evening, her frustration had mostly faded. Her small apartment had indeed been transformed. In the evenings, she took her mother to treatments at the hospital or helped her rest at home. And nearly every day, Grayson found ways to be part of their lives. Love always is, darling. That's what makes it worth it. I thought maybe you'd like to go with me. Jasmine hesitated. I'm not sure I have anything appropriate to wear. He drove Eleanor to appointments when Jasmine couldn't get time off work. He even spent one memorable evening playing cards with both women, Eleanor thoroughly beating both of them at gin rummy. It's just that my father expects me to be there, and I thought... Her mother was sitting in the recliner, looking more content than Jasmine had seen her in years. Jasmine felt out of place immediately, acutely aware of the designer labels and fine jewelry surrounding her. And what is it that you do, Miss Bell? May I introduce Jasmine Bell? Jasmine, this is Victoria Whitmore, a family friend. For all his wealth and status, Grayson seemed most comfortable in her small apartment, eating takeout and discussing books. She's by the Renaissance exhibit with her father. A woman in her 60s, dripping in diamonds, approached them. We weren't sure you'd make it. Your father said you've been quite preoccupied lately. I'm sorry about that, he murmured. Grayson remained by her side, his hand often finding hers or resting at her back, a constant reminder that she wasn't facing this scrutiny alone. Jasmine asked quietly, this world, the world of wealth and status and carefully measured words, was as uncomfortable for him as it was for her, though for different reasons. The more time they spent together, the more the differences in their backgrounds seemed to fade. The comparison made Jasmine uncomfortable. Her parents' relationship had ended in betrayal and abandonment, hardly a model to aspire to. Grayson and I are just getting to know each other, she said carefully. Eleanor shrugged. Jasmine winced. Yes, Mum. That was Mark. This one seems better, Eleanor said decisively. Ms. Bell, I understand you're the reason my son has been neglecting his responsibilities lately. This dinner has been on the calendar for months. Vanessa is counting on your presence. Father, I'd like you to meet Jasmine Bell. Jasmine, this is my father, Harrison Miles. We'll discuss this later. He nodded curtly to Jasmine. Ms. Bell. Before Jasmine could respond, her phone rang. Grayson, I need to take this, she said, stepping into her bedroom for privacy. Hi, she answered. Hi, Grayson replied, his voice warm through the phone. How was the rest of your day? Busy. The author event went well, though. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Miles. Your son speaks highly of you. Good. And your mother? Is she comfortable with the equipment? He's been remarkably silent about you until very recently. He looked back at his son. The Livingstons are expecting you to join them for dinner next week. I've already accepted on your behalf. Jasmine sat on the edge of her bed. She loves it, thank you for that. I know I'm sorry again, he paused. I've been thinking about what you said, about it being your responsibility. His honesty touched her. I was, he agreed. Really? Most people are idiots, Grayson said bluntly, making her laugh. I think it's remarkable. Her cheeks warmed at his praise. Is it working? He asked, humor in his voice. Maybe a little, she admitted. They talked for nearly an hour, about everything and nothing. Her day at the bookstore, his meeting in D.C., a book they'd both read recently. When they finally said goodnight, Jasmine found herself smiling at her phone like a teenager with her first crush. That was him, wasn't it? Eleanor asked when Jasmine returned to the living room. Yes, it was Grayson, Jasmine admitted. You like him. It wasn't a question, but Jasmine answered anyway. Yes, I do. More than I should, probably. Eleanor studied her daughter's face. Why should? What's wrong with liking him? Because we live in completely different worlds, Mom. He has more money than I can even imagine. Or maybe, Eleanor said thoughtfully, he's already realized he prefers your world to his. Have you considered that possibility? Jasmine hadn't, not really. It's complicated, she said finally. Eleanor laughed softly. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Jasmine worked at the bookstore during the day. He brought dinner when Jasmine was too tired to cook. Your young man is growing on me, Eleanor told Jasmine one night after Grayson had left. Jasmine had to agree, but reminders of those differences still appeared, like the night Grayson came to pick her up for dinner, dressed in an elegant suit. Where are we going? Jasmine asked, suddenly conscious of her simple dress. There's a charity event at the Walters Art Museum, he explained. It would be their first public appearance together in his world. You look beautiful, Grayson said immediately, but if you're uncomfortable, we could do something else. You thought what? Jasmine prompted when he trailed off. I thought it might be nice not to be alone for once at one of these things, he admitted. The vulnerability in his confession decided her. Give me 20 minutes to change? 30 minutes later, she emerged in the nicest dress she owned, a black cocktail dress she'd worn to a friend's wedding the previous year. The concern must have shown on her face, because Grayson immediately said, You look absolutely stunning. I'm not exactly dressed for a gala, she said self-consciously. Trust me, he said, offering his arm, you'll outshine everyone there. The Walters Art Museum was transformed for the evening. Lights twinkled from every archway, champagne flowed freely, and the city's elite mingled among priceless artwork. Grayson, darling. Her eyes slid to Jasmine, assessing her with a single glance. Mrs. Whitmore, Grayson said, his voice taking on a formality Jasmine had never heard before. Charmed, Mrs. Whitmore said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I work at a bookstore, Jasmine said, lifting her chin slightly. Reading Harbor, in Baltimore. How quaint, Mrs. Whitmore replied. Her gaze returned to Grayson. Vanessa was asking about you earlier. Thank you, Grayson said coolly. We'll be sure to say hello. As Mrs. Whitmore moved on, Jasmine felt Grayson's hand at the small of her back, warm and reassuring. Is everyone here going to be like her? Not everyone, he promised. Just most of them. Despite his attempt at humor, Jasmine could see the tension in his jaw. Throughout the evening, Jasmine met more people than she could possibly remember. Some were openly curious about her, others barely concealed their disdain. Grayson, a deep voice cut through the crowd. Grayson stiffened beside her. Father, he said, turning toward a distinguished older man with silver hair and eyes the same blue as Grayson's, though considerably colder. I was beginning to think you weren't coming, Harrison Miles said, not bothering to look at Jasmine. I wouldn't miss it, Grayson replied. Harrison finally turned his gaze to Jasmine, his expression revealing nothing. Father, Grayson warned. It's fine, Jasmine said, extending her hand. Harrison ignored her hand. Does he? Interesting. I have plans, Grayson said, his voice tight. Cancel them, Harrison replied simply. Vanessa is well aware that there is nothing between us beyond friendship, Grayson stated firmly. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. As he walked away, Jasmine felt Grayson's hand squeeze hers. I'm sorry about that, he said for what felt like the 100th time that evening. It's fine, she assured him, though it wasn't, not really. He's intimidating. He's a bully, Grayson corrected. Always has been. They made their way to a quieter corner of the museum, finding a bench in a room filled with Renaissance paintings. This is your world, Jasmine said softly, watching the glittering crowd through the doorway. All these people, these expectations, Grayson shook his head. No, this is my father's world. One he's tried to force me into since I was a child. He took her hand, his eyes intent on hers. My world is wherever I can be myself. Increasingly, that's with you, Jasmine asked. Rich men slumming it until they get bored? The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache. Grayson, I know what you're thinking, he said. That I'm romanticizing your life because it's different from mine. No, I don't know. I've seen you in both worlds now, mine and yours. And I can't help but wonder where you really belong. That eventually the novelty will wear off, and I'll go back to galas and board meetings and women like Vanessa. Isn't that what happens? Hurt flashed across his face. Is that what you think this is? What I'm doing? It's about people, about connection. I've spent my entire life surrounded by people and never felt like I belonged anywhere. Until I met you. Your father was just telling Daddy how much you're looking forward to it. Jasmine immediately regretted her words. And we both know how Harrison gets when his plans are disrupted. She touched Grayson's arm familiarly. Don't worry. I've selected a wonderful wine to accompany the meal, your favorite Bordeaux. I haven't confirmed that dinner, he said. Vanessa was marking her claim, reminding both of them that she had history with Grayson, that she knew things about him like his favorite wine that Jasmine didn't. Before she could respond, a familiar voice called out, Daddy was hoping you'd bid on the summer home in Martha's Vineyard. It would be perfect for us, I mean for you. Belonging isn't about places or social circles, Grayson said, his voice low and intense. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. The raw honesty in his words left Jasmine speechless. Grayson, there you are. They both turned to see the blonde woman from the restaurant, Vanessa, approaching, elegant in a red gown that seemed designed to draw every eye in the room. The city lights reflected on the dark water, creating a twinkling tapestry of gold against black. She seems nice, she said, unable to keep the sarcasm from her voice. You know how he gets about these charity things. Her gaze fell on Jasmine, recognition dawning. Oh, you're the woman from Bella Notte. Without a word, Grayson removed his suit jacket and draped it over her. The fabric was warm from his body, carrying the subtle scent of his cologne. He looked down at Jasmine, concern in his eyes. Are you okay? I know this evening was a lot. About my father, about Vanessa, about all of it. The one who sat at our table by mistake. And I've been part of it for so long that sometimes I forget how ugly it can be until I see it through someone else's eyes. Through your eyes. Vanessa, Grayson said, standing. Daddy insisted, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. In the dim light, his profile was sharp against the darkness. My father is difficult, but he's also getting older, more set in his ways. Someone needs to ensure the company continues to thrive, but also evolves, becomes more ethical, more sustainable. He turned to her, his eyes intense in the darkness. Because of you. When I'm with you, in your world, the bookstore, the poetry readings, even just having coffee together, I see what life can be when it's authentic. When connections are real, not based on advantage or status. He took her hand. You've given me something to fight for, Jasmine. A glimpse of what life could be. If you hate it so much, why stay? Jasmine stood, feeling distinctly underdressed next to Vanessa's perfection. Yes, that was me, Jasmine Bell. We've only known each other a few weeks, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. I feel the same way, she admitted softly. But I'm scared. Tonight showed me how different our worlds are. Those people, they looked at me like I was nothing. When I'm with you, I feel like myself, not Grayson Miles, heir to Miles Industrial, but just me. I'm falling in love with you, Jasmine Bell, he whispered. And for that moment at least, the spaces between their worlds didn't seem vast at all. I'm falling in love with you too, she admitted. And it terrifies me because everyone I've ever loved has left. And it terrifies me because I've never had anything real to lose before. Something's different, she observed. You're glowing. Vanessa Livingston, she replied, extending a manicured hand. How unexpected to see you here. The implication was clear. Women like Jasmine didn't belong at events like this. And then when that car sits there for 10 minutes, while two people inside are clearly doing more than saying goodnight. No matter what my father says, no matter what Vanessa thinks, no matter how many worlds apart we seem, I'm here. With you. Jasmine is my date, Grayson said firmly. His lips were warm against hers, the kiss gentle at first, then deepening as she responded. It had been weeks since she'd heard her mother laugh like that. Jasmine felt something unfurl inside her chest, a warmth, a rightness, a coming home. Is she? Vanessa raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. How interesting, especially considering our dinner next week, Eleanor challenged. Makes you see what matters and what doesn't. The woman his family wants him to marry was there, making it very clear that she has plans for their future together. The doctors called this afternoon with my latest test results. Who cares what they think? The only opinion that matters is his. The tumors are shrinking. It's not gone, not yet, but it's working, Jasmine. And yours. She moved to kneel beside her mother's chair, taking her hands. That's wonderful news, Mom. Then, as my first act of honest mothering, let me say this. Don't let fear stop you from being happy, Jasmine. I did that too many times. I was always looking for the next best thing, never appreciating what was right in front of me. She paused. Including you. Jasmine felt Grayson tense beside her. When this is all over, when I'm well again, I want to try to be a better mother to you. Always have, even when I was terrible at showing it. I was. I know it's late. You're grown now, building your own life. But maybe we could start fresh, be more honest with each other. But your father has, Vanessa replied sweetly. You've spent your whole life being strong, because I wasn't. You've closed yourself off from love because you saw how badly I handled it. But you're not me, Jasmine, and Grayson isn't your father. Don't punish him, or yourself, for other people's mistakes. You should have seen the people at that gala tonight. They looked at me like I was something the cat dragged in. She leaned forward and hugged her mother, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, feeling the fragile bones beneath her thin robe. The territorial gesture wasn't lost on Jasmine. If you'll excuse us, Grayson said, his voice cool. Jasmine and I were just leaving. So soon, Vanessa pouted, but the auction hasn't even started. Men like Harris and Miles always have plans. Doesn't mean they get to dictate their children's happiness. Her expression softened. Jasmine, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. Chased after men who weren't worth it, ignored the ones who were. But one thing I've learned is that when you find someone who looks at you the way Grayson looks at you, you hold on tight. The slip was deliberate, Jasmine was certain, a calculated reminder that in Vanessa's world, Grayson's world, their futures were already intertwined, regardless of Jasmine's temporary presence. Give your father my regrets, Grayson said. Good night, Vanessa. He placed his hand at the small of Jasmine's back, guiding her away from Vanessa and through the crowded rooms toward the exit. Once outside, Jasmine took a deep breath of the cool night air. Grayson let out a short laugh. Vanessa is many things, nice isn't one of them. I'm fine, she said automatically. No, you're not, he countered gently. And neither am I. Let's get out of here. Instead of taking her home, Grayson directed his driver to a small, secluded spot overlooking the harbor. I come here sometimes, Grayson said, as they sat on a bench facing the water, when I need to escape. Jasmine hugged her arms around herself, the night air chilly against her bare shoulders. Thank you, she said, both for the jacket and for bringing her to this peaceful place after the chaos of the gala. They sat in silence for a while, watching the gentle movement of boats on the water. Finally, Grayson spoke. I'm sorry about tonight. You don't need to apologize for them, Jasmine said. Yes, I do, he insisted. Because that world, their world, it's toxic. Jasmine turned to look at him. Grayson sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's complicated. The company employs thousands of people. And that someone is you? Who else? He asked simply. If I walk away, my father will bring in someone who thinks exactly like he does. Nothing will change. Jasmine could hear the weight of responsibility in his voice. It's a heavy burden to bear. It is, he agreed, but lately it's felt lighter. Me? Jasmine was genuinely surprised. What have I done? You've reminded me why it matters, he said. Why fighting for change is worth it. His words made her throat tight with emotion. Grayson. I know it's fast, he said quickly. Jasmine felt tears prick at her eyes. They're wrong, Grayson said fiercely. You're everything. Before she could respond, he leaned forward and kissed her. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Grayson rested his forehead against hers. The confession, so raw and honest, broke through the last of Jasmine's defenses. Grayson pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "I'm not leaving," he promised. For the first time in her adult life, Jasmine allowed herself to believe that someone might actually stay, that someone might choose her first and always. They kissed again under the stars, the harbor lights twinkling around them like a private constellation. Eleanor was still awake when Jasmine returned home, the special recliner positioned near the window where she could see the street below. "There you are," she said as Jasmine entered. "I was beginning to worry." "Sorry," Jasmine replied, hanging up her coat. The event went longer than expected. Eleanor studied her daughter's face. Jasmine felt herself blush. "It was just a nice evening." "Mm-hmm," Eleanor hummed knowingly. "And would that have anything to do with the very passionate kiss I just witnessed from this window?" "Mom!" Jasmine exclaimed, mortified. "Were you spying on us?" "Not intentionally," Eleanor defended with a smile. "But when a fancy car pulls up outside, a woman gets curious." Jasmine covered her face with her hands. "Oh my God," Eleanor laughed, a sound so normal and healthy that it made Jasmine's embarrassment fade. "Don't be embarrassed, darling," Eleanor said. "I'm happy for you. He's a good man, I can tell." Jasmine sat on the edge of the sofa. "He is, but his world is so different from ours." "So?" "It's not that simple," Jasmine argued. "His father hates me." Eleanor snorted. Jasmine was surprised by her mother's insight. "When did you get so wise?" "Cancer has a way of clarifying things," Eleanor said with a small smile. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, a rare, peaceful moment between mother and daughter. "There's something else I need to tell you," Eleanor said finally. Jasmine felt her heart drop. "And?" "The treatment is working," Eleanor said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Relief flooded through Jasmine, bringing fresh tears to her eyes. "It is," Eleanor agreed, "and I've been thinking." The vulnerability in her mother's face touched something deep in Jasmine's heart. "I'd like that," she said softly. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hands. "Good." The acknowledgement, so long overdue, brought fresh tears to Jasmine's eyes. "Mom." "No, let me finish," Eleanor insisted. Jasmine nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I love you too, darling," Eleanor replied. That night, as Jasmine lay in bed, her mind replayed the events of the evening, the gala, Harrison's coldness, Vanessa's possessiveness, and, most of all, Grayson's confession by the harbor. "I'm falling in love with you, Jasmine Bell," that sometimes the wrong table could lead to exactly the right person. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that love might not always end in heartbreak. Her phone chimed with a text. "Just wanted to say goodnight again, and that I meant every word." Eleanor continued to improve, her energy returning bit by bit. The clinical trial was working better than anyone had expected, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Jasmine's life. After the night of the gala and their kiss by the harbor, something had shifted between them. Eleanor, who was regaining her strength daily, took great delight in watching the two of them together. The careful distance they'd maintained gave way to a closeness that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Before everything went wrong. And then there was Grayson. Grayson began spending most evenings at Jasmine's apartment. He'd arrive after work with takeout food or groceries to cook dinner. "This is Harrison Miles. I'd like to speak with you." Could someone like Grayson really be content in her world long term? And what about his family? His responsibilities? She pressed the button to unlock the building's front door before she could think better of it. "You remind me of how your father and I were in the beginning," she told Jasmine one afternoon while Grayson was at work. Jasmine opened the door to find Harrison Miles standing there, immaculate in a dark suit despite the pouring rain. "Miles," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "This is a surprise." He carried a black umbrella and a leather portfolio, busy with work as he should be. He set the leather portfolio on the coffee table. "I came to speak with you directly, Ms. Bell, about your relationship with Grayson." "I won't take much of your time." I'm not sure that's any of your business, Mr. Miles. Jasmine, who was arranging fresh flowers Grayson had sent that morning, frowned. That's not exactly reassuring, Mum. Grayson has always been idealistic. It's both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. He sees the world as he wishes it to be, not as it is. It was everything else. We were too young, too selfish, too unwilling to compromise, Jasmine asked, unable to keep a hint of challenge from her voice. She adjusted herself in the recliner, which she needed less and less as her strength returned. His future has been mapped out since before he could walk. The best schools, the right social circles, eventually taking over as CEO of Miles Industrial when I retire. A legacy that benefits many, including your mother. Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Tea? You and Grayson are different. You see each other clearly. Eleanor sighed. I know. But what went wrong between your father and me wasn't the love part. The same foundation that will be directed by Grayson's wife someday, a position that has traditionally been filled by a woman with the right background. I've had my team look into you, Miss Bell. You're a talented writer. Your poetry has potential. With the right connections, the right opportunities, you could have a promising career. The right connections, the right understanding of our world. What does my mother have to do with this? The Miles Foundation could fund a scholarship for you to attend a prestigious MFA program. We could arrange for your work to be published. You could have the literary career you've always wanted. Your mother's place in the trial is secure regardless of your decisions. Miles, I merely want you to understand what's at stake for Grayson, and by extension, for thousands of others who depend on Miles Industrial and its charitable foundation. You must see that you and Grayson come from different worlds. Eventually, that reality will assert itself. I'm simply suggesting we avoid the inevitable pain by making a clean break now, one that benefits everyone involved. The idea that Harrison had investigated her, had calculated exactly what to offer to tempt her away from Grayson, made her feel violated. Was she really what was best for Grayson? Was she pulling him away from responsibilities that mattered, not just to his family, but to thousands of people who depended on Miles Industrial? He's always been idealistic, as I said, but idealism fades when confronted with reality. The reality is that Grayson was born to lead Miles Industrial, to marry someone who understands our world, to continue our family legacy. Jasmine wasn't so sure. While the past weeks had been wonderful, doubts still crept in during quiet moments. These questions hovered at the edges of her happiness, shadows she tried to ignore but couldn't quite banish. Think about what I'm offering. Think about your future, your mother's health, your poetry reaching a wider audience. As she scanned it, her expression changed from outrage to something more complicated. Oh, Jasmine, this is a remarkable opportunity. A full scholarship to any MFA program in the country. Publication of your poetry collection. All I ask in return is that you consider what's truly best for Grayson. Let me be direct. My son has responsibilities. To our family, to our company, to the thousands of people who depend on Miles Industrial for their livelihoods. Are you threatening to withdraw my mother's treatment if I continue seeing your son? I can't believe you're saying this. If that's with Grayson, then fight for him with everything you have. But if you have doubts, real serious doubts, then maybe a clean break now would hurt less than a messier one later. But it's also a chance for you to pursue your dreams, dreams you've had since you were a little girl. Not until you've decided what you want to do, but I am saying you should think about what you really want, not just now but for your future, Jasmine asked, though she knew exactly what her mother meant. He seemed so at home here, in her small apartment, with its mismatched furniture and cramped kitchen. But was it an illusion? A temporary escape from the reality of who he was meant to be? That the differences between you will matter more than the feelings you share? Eleanor squeezed her hand. I'm not saying Harrison is right. Hey, he said, leaning down to kiss her. Sorry I'm late. The meeting with the board ran long. I'm saying that if there's any part of you that already believes your relationship has an expiration date, maybe it's worth considering his offer. He offered me everything I've ever wanted professionally if I'll walk away from you. Just thinking about some new poems I'm working on. And the worst part is I'm actually considering it because I'm terrified that he's right, that eventually you'll realize I don't belong in your world. I thought I'd make that pasta dish you liked last week. She took Jasmine's hand. "I've watched you fall in love with this young man. I've seen how happy he makes you." "Just tired," she lied. "Long day at the bookstore." "Okay, what's going on? You've barely said 10 words all evening." Grayson noticed, shooting her concerned glances, but he didn't press her in front of Eleanor. "Are you sure that's all it is? But I've also seen the doubts in your eyes. The Livingston and Miles families have been aligned for generations. I'll expect your answer by the end of the week. A union between Grayson and Vanessa would strengthen both our companies and ensure the continuation of philanthropic efforts like the one benefiting your mother." Before leaving, he turned back. "One more thing, Ms. Bell. Grayson doesn't need to know about our conversation. It would only complicate matters unnecessarily. These past few weeks he has been distracted. Everything concerning my son is my business, Ms. Bell, especially when it affects the future of our family and our company." On a rainy Tuesday evening, Jasmine sat at her small kitchen table, working on new poems while Eleanor napped in her room. The sound of the door buzzer startled her. Grayson wasn't expected until later, and Martha never dropped by without calling first. Curious, Jasmine pressed the intercom. "Hello? Ms. Bell?" Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. Grayson's father here at her apartment? A few minutes later, a sharp knock sounded. "Mr. Indeed," he replied, his eyes taking in the small apartment with a single sweep. "May I come in?" Jasmine stepped aside, suddenly acutely aware of the apartment's modest furnishings, the second-hand furniture, the stacks of books on every surface. "No, thank you," Harrison said, remaining standing though she gestured toward the sofa. "Is Grayson all right?" Jasmine asked, worry creeping into her voice. "My son is fine," Harrison assured her. Jasmine felt her defenses rise. A thin smile crossed Harrison's face. "I don't see how my relationship with Grayson affects Miles Industrial," Jasmine said, forcing herself to meet his gaze directly. Harrison unbuttoned his suit jacket and sat on the edge of the sofa, motioning for Jasmine to sit as well. "By me," Jasmine said flatly. "Precisely." Harrison opened the portfolio and removed several documents. "And how is the world, Mr. Miles?" Harrison's eyes hardened. "The world, Ms. Bell, is driven by power, money, and connections. Grayson was born into all three." "That sounds more like your plan than his," Jasmine observed. "It is the plan that will ensure our family legacy continues," Harrison countered. The mention of her mother caught Jasmine off guard. Harrison extracted a document from the portfolio. "The clinical trial that is saving her life, funded by the Miles Foundation." "Someone like Vanessa Livingston," Jasmine said quietly. "Exactly." Harrison placed the document on the table between them. Jasmine stared at the document, which detailed the funding for her mother's clinical trial. Harrison looked offended. "Of course not, I would never be so crude." He pulled out another document, this one with Jasmine's name at the top. Jasmine felt sick. "Are you offering to buy me off?" "I'm offering to help you achieve your dreams," Harrison corrected smoothly. "In exchange for leaving Grayson," Jasmine said, the pieces falling into place. Harrison leaned forward slightly. "In exchange for allowing my son to fulfill his destiny without distractions." Jasmine stood up, anger coursing through her. "I think you should leave." Mr. Harrison remained seated, his expression unchanged. "Don't be hasty, Ms. Bell. And you think you know what that is better than he does?" Jasmine challenged. "I know my son," Harrison said, rising to his feet. He placed a business card on top of the documents. "Take some time to consider my offer." With that, he gathered his umbrella and moved toward the door. After he left, Jasmine sat staring at the documents on her coffee table, her mind racing. But worse was the seed of doubt he'd planted. "Who was that?" Eleanor's voice came from the bedroom doorway. She was leaning against the frame, looking more alert than she had in weeks. "Harrison Miles," Jasmine said, her voice hollow. "Grayson's father." Eleanor's eyes widened as she moved to sit beside Jasmine. "What did he want?" Jasmine gestured to the documents. "To offer me a deal. My dreams come true in exchange for leaving his son alone." "The nerve of that man," Eleanor exclaimed, picking up one of the papers. "It's a bribe, Mom," Jasmine said flatly. "Yes, it is," Eleanor agreed. Jasmine stared at her mother in disbelief. "Are you saying I should take it?" That I should leave Grayson because his father offered me money? Eleanor sighed, setting the paper down. No, of course not. What doubts? The fear that eventually his world will pull him back. Jasmine pulled her hand away. I'm saying that I want you to be happy, Eleanor clarified. Before Jasmine could respond, the buzzer sounded again. This time it was Grayson. Don't tell him, Eleanor said quickly. Jasmine nodded numbly, gathering Harrison's documents and shoving them into a drawer before buzzing Grayson up. When he entered the apartment, his face lit up at the sight of her, as it always did. It's fine, Jasmine said, trying to sound normal. Mom and I were just talking. Grayson greeted Eleanor warmly, then held up a bag of groceries. As he moved to the kitchen and began unpacking ingredients, chatting easily with Eleanor about her day, Jasmine watched him with a heavy heart. Throughout dinner, Jasmine was quieter than usual. After they'd cleaned up and Eleanor had retired to her room, Grayson pulled Jasmine onto the sofa beside him. Jasmine leaned her head against his shoulder, breathing in the now familiar scent of him. Grayson's arm tightened around her. No, she wanted to say, your father was here. Instead, she said, I'm fine. Grayson seemed to accept this, though not entirely convinced. Speaking of your poetry, I have some news that might cheer you up. Jasmine tensed. What news? I submitted some of your poems to the Atlantic. With your permission from that night at Verses, remember? You said it was okay. His eyes were bright with excitement. They want to publish 3 of them in their next issue, and they're offering you a regular spot in their poetry section. Jasmine sat up straight, staring at him. What? I asked them to look at your work, that's all. Your poetry did the rest. Just unlikely for most poets without connections, but your work deserves to be read, Jasmine. All I did was make sure the right people saw it. The Atlantic? That's impossible. Not impossible, Grayson said, grinning. The right connections, the right opportunities. Harrison's words echoed in her mind. Your words reaching more people? You pulled strings, she said quietly. Grayson's smile faltered. I wouldn't put it that way. I know some people who know some people. The fact that you could get my poems into the Atlantic with a few phone calls proves that. How is that different from anyone else leveraging their resources to support the people they care about? Don't you see? What your father offered and what you did, they're different in intent, but the same in effect, using wealth and power to shape my future. But they wouldn't have seen it without your influence, Jasmine pressed. That's not fair. I was trying to help, not control you. Probably not, Grayson admitted, looking confused by her reaction. But isn't that a good thing? Jasmine stood up, needing space. It's exactly what your father offered me this afternoon. Long term, is it enough for you to have a safe space with me while the rest of your life pulls you in a completely different direction? A place where I can be myself, not just a Miles. Like I'm always going to be the one receiving, and you're always going to be the one giving. Grayson's expression shifted from confusion to shock. My father was here? Today. I don't want the life my father has planned for me if you're not in it. He came with an offer, a scholarship to any MFA program I want, publication of my poetry, connections in the literary world. I'm not asking you to fit into my world. I'm asking if we can build our own. He sold to a company called Meridian Development. Martha said they're planning to tear down the whole block and build luxury condos. Your father, Vanessa, that whole world. They're not going to just disappear because we want them to. She crossed her arms over her chest. All I have to do is leave you alone. About me being a distraction from your responsibilities? We acquired it last year as part of our urban renewal division. Yes, Jasmine said, unable to hold the truth back any longer. Jasmine, my father sees everything, everyone, as pieces on a chessboard. This is exactly the kind of thing I want to change when I take over. Developments that displace local businesses, that destroy community spaces. He reached for her hand. Let me fix this. I can stop the sale, make sure Reading Harbor stays open. I swear, Jasmine, I had no idea. The development division operates largely independently. I've been focused on our manufacturing sectors. It's possible if we both want it to be, but you have to decide if that's what you want. If I'm what you want, with all the complications that come with me. The company you're going to run someday. Tools to be used for the greater glory of Miles Industrial. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. The realization that Grayson's world would always collide with hers in ways she couldn't predict or control. You're angry that my family's company is buying the building, but you don't want me to stop it. He moved toward the door, then paused. But Jasmine? Martha had gathered the small staff, Jasmine and 2 part-time college students, around the register counter. This place has been here for like 20 years. Don't let my father's vision of the world convince you that ours isn't possible. What am I supposed to do, Jasmine? That's all the notice they're required to give us. But that's business, I guess. Big fish eat little fish. Pals downtown said they might have a position opening next month. Reading Harbor had been her safe harbor for 5 years, the place where she'd rebuilt herself after college, where she'd found a community of fellow book lovers and poets. Nothing lasts forever, dear. Many bought extra books as a show of support, though it was too little, too late, not even bookstores. The new owners take possession on the 1st of next month. Rents have tripled in this neighborhood in the last 5 years, but as she locked the front door of Reading Harbor, she saw a familiar figure across the street. And the customer base we've built is here. Moving would mean starting over, and frankly, I don't have another 20 years in me. Grayson's face darkened with anger. He had no right. I don't know how to reconcile who you are with who I am. I don't know if it's even possible. When their eyes met, he didn't approach, giving her the space to decide whether to come to him. You swooping in to solve my problems with your money and influence. But was he wrong? Jasmine interrupted. About us coming from different worlds, or of him? I wanted to see how you were doing after the news about the store. Grayson's voice was bitter, the same justifications he's always used. Grayson stood, moving toward her. Of course he was wrong, but it's not the one I choose. He took her hands in his. I've spent my whole life trying to please him, trying to be the son he wanted. And in the process, I almost missed the chance to be the man I want to be. But it is who you are, Jasmine argued. You're Grayson Miles, heir to a fortune, future CEO of a massive company. But what will you do? Where will you go? That depends on you. You can't just throw away your entire life for me. That's not fair to either of us. On what you decide. One that aligns with my values, not my father's. And yes, you're a part of that choice. A big part. But even if you decide we don't have a future together, I can't go back to being the person my father wants me to be. You bought a building? Just like that? I spent the morning looking into the Meridian acquisition. It turns out my father fast-tracked this particular development personally, the timing. And I've been looking for a way to invest in something, so I used my connections to help someone I love, Grayson said, frustration evident in his voice. Because most people's resources don't include the power to fundamentally alter someone's life path, Jasmine shot back. But I need to know if you're making the same choice. He had given up everything, his family, his fortune, his secure future, for the chance to be with her. The inequality she had feared now felt reversed. But I had an idea this morning, before I confronted my father. He hesitated. I bought a building, 3 blocks from here. It was a small publishing house that went out of business last year. The space is perfect for a bookstore. Grayson ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Jasmine had come to recognize as a sign of his distress. I know, Jasmine said, her voice softening. I know your intentions were good, but it still feels unequal. That's not true, Grayson protested. You've given me more than you know, authenticity, connection. But is that enough? Jasmine asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since Harrison's visit. Grayson moved closer, taking her hands in his. It's more than enough. Jasmine, I love you. The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tighten with emotion. I love you too, she whispered, but I'm scared. No, they're not, Grayson agreed, but we can face them together. The question hung between them, full of hope and uncertainty. Before Jasmine could respond, her phone rang. It was Martha from the bookstore. I should take this, Jasmine said, stepping away from Grayson. It might be important. The call was brief, but shocking. When Jasmine hung up, she turned to Grayson with wide eyes. What is it? He asked, concern evident in his face. That was Martha. Reading Harbor is closing. The owner is selling the building to a developer. We have 3 weeks to clear out. What? Why didn't the owner tell you himself? Jasmine sank onto the sofa, still processing the news. Grayson's expression changed subtly, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. You know something, Jasmine said, studying him. What is it? Grayson hesitated, then sat beside her. Meridian Development is a subsidiary of Miles Industrial. Jasmine felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Your company is destroying my bookstore. I didn't know, Grayson said quickly. But it's still your family's company, Jasmine said, standing again and pacing the small living room. Grayson's expression was pained. Jasmine pulled her hand away. No, that's exactly what I don't want. Then what do you want? Grayson asked, frustration edging his voice. I don't know, she exclaimed, tears threatening. That's the problem. Grayson stood, his own emotions clearly running high. The challenge in his voice was clear. Jasmine looked at him, this man she'd come to love despite every reason not to, and felt torn between her heart and her head. I need some time, she said finally, to think, to figure out what I really want. Hurt flashed in Grayson's eyes, but he nodded. Okay, time. I can give you that. After he left, Jasmine sat alone in the quiet apartment, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. The offer from Harrison, the news about Reading Harbor. Her phone buzzed with a text from Martha. Emergency staff meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring coffee. We're going to need it. The atmosphere at Reading Harbor the next morning was somber. 3 weeks, Martha said, her usual cheerfulness dimmed. It's not right, one of the students, Ryan, protested. 23, Martha corrected. I opened it right after my divorce, sank everything I had into it. She sighed. Jasmine had been quiet, still processing everything. Have you thought about relocating? Finding another space? Martha shook her head. The reality of the situation settled over them all. Reading Harbor wasn't just losing its location, it was closing for good. I've already spoken to some other bookstores about taking you all on, Martha continued. Jasmine felt a hollowness in her chest. I can't believe it's really over, she said softly. Martha squeezed her shoulder. The day passed in a blur of customers expressing shock and dismay at the news, which Martha had posted on the front door. By closing time, Jasmine felt emotionally drained. She hadn't heard from Grayson all day, respecting her request for time to think. Grayson was leaning against his car, clearly waiting for her. After a moment's hesitation, Jasmine crossed the street. How long have you been waiting? Not long, he said, though the shadows under his eyes suggested otherwise. It's been a hard day, she admitted. For everyone. Grayson nodded, his expression troubled. Isn't a coincidence, Jasmine finished for him. He's sending me a message. I think so, yes. Grayson's jaw tightened. I confronted him about it, and about his visit to you yesterday. Jasmine's eyes widened. What did he say? That he was doing what was necessary to secure the future of the company. That sometimes hard decisions have to be made for the greater good. And what did you say? Jasmine asked quietly. Grayson met her eyes directly. I told him that if this is how he conducts business, destroying people's livelihoods to manipulate personal situations, then I want no part of it. Jasmine felt a chill run through her. What does that mean? It means I walked away, Grayson said simply. From the company, from my inheritance, from all of it. You can't be serious, Jasmine said, shocked. Grayson, that company is your birthright, your future. No, he corrected gently. It was the future my father planned for me. Jasmine stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. A small smile touched Grayson's lips. On me, Jasmine repeated, confused. Yes, Grayson said. Because I've made my choice, Jasmine. I choose you. I choose us. The weight of his words settled over her. This is too much, she said, pulling her hands away. I'm not throwing away my life, Grayson argued. I'm choosing a different one. Jasmine studied his face, seeing the resolve behind his words. What about Reading Harbor? All those people losing their jobs? I can't stop the development, Grayson admitted. Not anymore. Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. I still have my personal savings, Grayson explained. Meaningful, something that matters. Grayson, I can't accept that. In a business I believe in people I believe in. He took a deep breath. But if it makes you uncomfortable, we can figure out another arrangement. A loan, a partnership, whatever works. It's too much. Wait, where are you staying tonight? If you've left your father's house. His eyes held hers. The building is yours, Jasmine. I need to talk to Martha. It's a lot to process. Or Martha's, or both of yours together. No strings attached. We can talk more, figure things out. Reading Harbor can continue just in a new location. Jasmine felt dizzy with the implications, and I need you to be completely honest. It's not a gift, he clarified. It's an investment. Jasmine's mind was racing, but I know that I was never truly happy in that life. It was like wearing clothes that didn't fit, constantly uncomfortable but so familiar I'd stopped noticing. He reached across the table for her hand. What I found with you, authenticity, connection, purpose, that's worth more than any inheritance. What about the bookstore? Your offer to buy the building? When the reality of what you've given up fully hits you? Of course, Grayson said, but what will you do for work, for a place to live? Take all the time you need. It matters to you, that's reason enough. I sent them 3 of your poems, the ones you read at Verses that night, with a note saying they were written by someone I thought deserved a wider audience. That's it, I swear. No pressure, no favors called in. The poetry editor replied the next day saying they were excellent and asking to see more of your work. Thank you for that and for everything else. I have connections in that world, people who would support the vision regardless of my last name. He squeezed her hand. As for living arrangements, I'll figure that out. One step at a time. He hesitated, then added softly, for everything. After what my father did, I understand your concerns. But Jasmine, I would never use my connections to advance your career without your consent. I believe in your talent. I wanted others to see what I see. Could they be, with all the complications still facing them? With comfortable chairs for reading, and the cafe can open onto the small courtyard in the back. Together. As he turned to leave, Jasmine caught his arm. Without the Miles name behind him, progress was slower, but his passion and genuine commitment had already attracted several key supporters. I thought losing my family's support would feel like losing my identity, but I've never felt more like myself. I've got a hotel room, Grayson assured her. Don't worry about me. The doubts that had plagued Jasmine began to recede as she watched Grayson throw himself wholeheartedly into their new venture, never once showing regret for the life he'd left behind. Jasmine, Grayson, and Martha spent every spare moment planning the new Reading Harbor location, maybe because you're finally free to define your own success. Grayson had read it once, then filed it away without comment. But Jasmine had seen the hurt in his eyes, the pain of a final rejection from the father, whose approval he'd sought his entire life. She was sitting at the small desk they'd set up in the store's office, finalizing orders for their opening inventory, when the notification chimed. We were particularly moved by your exploration of connection and authenticity in wrong tables and right timings. The building Grayson had purchased was indeed perfect, a charming 3-story brick structure with large windows and wooden floors that creaked pleasantly underfoot. The position would require relocation to San Francisco and would include not only editorial responsibilities, but also the opportunity to publish your own collection through our associated press. The subject line read simply, Poetry Editor Position. If you're interested, please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss details. If Reading Harbor expands to include a small cafe, hosts more events, maybe even incorporates a small publishing operation for local poets, it could be sustainable long-term. But Jasmine did worry. The thought of him alone in some impersonal hotel room, having just upended his entire life, made her heart ache despite her confusion. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of professionally, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And the smile that spread across Grayson's face told her it was enough for now. She found none, only the open, honest expression of the man she'd fallen in love with, leaving Eleanor, who was finally building a real relationship with her. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Harrison Miles had offered as a bribe, but this was real, earned through her own talent, not bought with influence. Martha's voice called from the main floor. "The shelves for the children's section just arrived. Can you come take a look?" "Come home with me," she said impulsively. Her background in interior design, a career she'd abandoned years ago, proved invaluable as they reimagined the space. "Jasmine, that's amazing. Congratulations." Had Grayson somehow arranged this too, despite his assurances that he'd only sent her poems to the Atlantic? Eleanor was having dinner with friends, another sign of her improving health, giving Jasmine the perfect opportunity to discuss the offer with Grayson. Yet she hesitated, uncertain how to broach the subject. "I don't know. It's an incredible opportunity, the kind that doesn't come along twice." The hope that lit his eyes made her decision feel right, even amidst all the uncertainty. Finally he asked, "Do you think I had something to do with this offer?" But the knowledge of the offer lingered, a weight she carried alone throughout the day. "I had no idea the San Francisco Literary Review was looking for an editor. I have no connections there." Eleanor was delighted to see Grayson, though she immediately sensed the tension between him and Jasmine. After a brief conversation, she excused herself to her room, giving them privacy. Like he'd been waiting for me to disappoint him so he could justify cutting me out. "Tell me exactly what happened with your father," Jasmine said, as they sat at her small kitchen table, cups of tea growing cold between them. Grayson recounted the confrontation in detail, his father's unapologetic stance about both his visit to Jasmine and the bookstore acquisition, the ultimatum that followed, and Grayson's decision to walk away. "The doctors are optimistic, and she's made friends here, built a support network. She doesn't need me hovering." He seemed almost relieved, Grayson said, surprise still evident in his voice. "Maybe he was," Jasmine suggested gently. "Some people need villains in their stories to avoid facing their own flaws. I'm thinking that I love what we're building here, the bookstore, our relationship, all of it. What about your mother? But I'm also thinking that this job, it's what I've dreamed of since I was a teenager. The chance to help shape a major literary magazine, to have my own collection published." She met his eyes directly. "And I'm worried that if I don't take it, I might resent that choice someday, just like you might someday resent walking away from your family's company." Grayson smiled slightly. "That sounds like one of your poems." "Maybe it will be someday," she said, returning his smile tentatively. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened settling between them. "I need to ask you something," Jasmine finally said. Grayson nodded. "Always. Are you going to regret this? Not today, not tomorrow, but a year from now. 5 years." Grayson considered her question seriously. "I can't predict the future," he said slowly. The sincerity in his voice made Jasmine's eyes sting with tears. "I have ideas," Grayson said, sounding more excited than concerned. "I've always wanted to start a foundation focused on literacy and education, separate from my family's influence." Jasmine took a deep breath. "The offer stands," Grayson said firmly, "whether you and I are together or not. Reading Harbor matters to the community." Jasmine studied his face, looking for any sign of manipulation or calculation. "Martha will never accept charity," she said finally. "Neither will I." "It's not charity," Grayson insisted. "It's an investment. The building is sound financially." The vision he described made Jasmine's heart race. It was everything she and Martha had dreamed of, but never had the capital to pursue. "A partnership then," she said slowly, "between you, me, and Martha. Equal stakes." Grayson's eyes lit up. "That sounds perfect. And one more condition," Jasmine added. "The Atlantic. I want to know exactly what you said to them about my poetry." Grayson looked sheepish. The simplicity of his answer made Jasmine feel ashamed of her suspicions. "I'm sorry for doubting you." "Don't be," Grayson said. The warmth in his gaze made her throat tight with emotion. "Does this mean—" Grayson hesitated, hope creeping into his voice. "Are we okay?" Jasmine considered the question carefully. Were they okay? I think, she said slowly, that we're figuring it out. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was an honest one. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Eleanor, whose health continued to improve, threw herself into the project with unexpected enthusiasm. "We'll put the poetry section here," she suggested, pointing to a sun-filled corner. Watching her mother come alive with purpose, Jasmine felt a new closeness developing between them, one built on shared goals rather than shared wounds. Grayson, meanwhile, had rented a small apartment nearby and begun laying the groundwork for his educational foundation. "It's strange," he told Jasmine one evening, as they walked through the nearly completed bookstore. Jasmine squeezed his hand. Their relationship had deepened during these weeks of shared purpose. Harrison Miles had made only one attempt to contact his son, a formal letter delivered by courier, outlining the terms of Grayson's disinheritance. That night, she had held him as he finally allowed himself to grieve the family relationship he'd never truly had and now never would. 1 week before the new Reading Harbor was set to open, Jasmine received an unexpected email. The sender was San Francisco Literary Review, one of the country's most prestigious literary magazines. With trembling fingers, Jasmine opened the email. "Dear Ms. Bell, your recent publications in The Atlantic have caught our attention. The San Francisco Literary Review is seeking a new poetry editor to join our team beginning next month. We believe your unique voice and perspective would be a valuable addition to our publication. Sincerely, Elena Winters, Editor-in-Chief." Jasmine stared at the screen in disbelief. The San Francisco Literary Review, a poetry editor position, her own collection published. But it would mean leaving Baltimore, leaving the new bookstore they'd poured their hearts into, leaving Grayson. She closed the email without responding, her mind in turmoil. Or was it? A small voice of doubt whispered in her mind. "Jasmine." Pushing the email from her mind, Jasmine went downstairs to help with the delivery. That evening, as she and Grayson shared a quiet dinner at her apartment, the unread email seemed to pulse like a beacon from her phone. "You're somewhere else tonight," Grayson observed, setting down his fork. "Everything okay?" Jasmine met his concerned gaze. "I received an email today from the San Francisco Literary Review." Grayson's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's impressive. What did they want?" "They offered me a job," Jasmine said, watching his face carefully. "As their new poetry editor in San Francisco." She saw the impact of her words immediately, the flash of shock, quickly masked by a forced smile. "I haven't accepted," she said quickly. "But you're considering it," Grayson said. It wasn't a question. Jasmine sighed. "Like the bookstore," Grayson said quietly. The tension between them thickened. "Yes," Jasmine admitted, "like the bookstore." Grayson was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The directness of his question caught her off guard. "Did you?" "No," he said firmly. "I swear to you, Jasmine." Relief washed through her, followed immediately by guilt for doubting him. "I believe you." "But you still don't know what to do," Grayson observed. "No," she admitted. "I don't." Grayson reached across the table, taking her hand. "Tell me what you're thinking. All of it." Jasmine took a deep breath. "I won't regret that decision," Grayson said with quiet certainty. "But I understand your concern." He squeezed her hand gently. "She's doing better," Jasmine said. "Over her anymore." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision heavy between them. "When do they need an answer?" Grayson finally asked. "By the end of the week," Jasmine said. Grayson nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, here's what I think. You should take a few days to really consider what you want. Talk to your mother, talk to Martha, and then make the decision that feels right for you. Not for me, not for anyone else." "But what about us?" Jasmine asked, the question that had been at the center of her turmoil finally voiced. "What happens to us if I go to San Francisco? But I do know that I love you enough to want you to pursue your dreams, wherever they lead you." Grayson's expression was both sad and resolute. "I don't know." "Even if that means leaving," Jasmine pressed. She'd accused him once of trying to fix her problems with his money and influence. Now he was offering the one thing he couldn't buy, the space for her to make her own choice, even if it meant losing her. Even then, he confirmed, though the pain in his eyes betrayed how difficult those words were to say. I need you to have the same freedom to choose. Jasmine felt tears prick at her eyes. That's not fair to you. After everything you've given up, I'll be here. I gave up things I didn't want for a life I did want, Grayson interrupted gently. And San Francisco has bookstores too, you know. Maybe we could open a Reading Harbor West someday. His selflessness only made her decision harder. Every time she saw him, working tirelessly on the final preparations for the store opening, always with a smile and an encouraging word for everyone involved, her heart twisted with the knowledge that she might be about to walk away from him. I need some time, she whispered. The response email to Elena Winters was drafted but unsent. Her finger hovered over the send button. Take all the time you need, Grayson said, lifting her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. By Thursday, Jasmine still hadn't responded to the San Francisco Literary Review. The deadline was Friday at noon. The grand opening of the new Reading Harbor was scheduled for Saturday. It's the right choice for my career, for my future. She had spoken with her mother, who had surprised her by encouraging her to consider the offer seriously. The heart doesn't always get what it wants. Maybe it's time to put your dreams first for once. A strange numbness settled over her as she watched the message disappear into the digital ether. It was done. In 3 weeks, she would move across the country to start her new life. The morning sunlight caught in his dark hair, highlighting the strands of gold she'd only noticed when they were close. You've made your decision, haven't you? You've spent so much of your life taking care of others, Eleanor had said, but sometimes it knows what we need better than our heads do. For a moment they sat in silence, watching a pair of squirrels chase each other around a nearby oak. Just in time for tomorrow's opening, he descended the ladder with easy grace. What do you think of the final touches? She kissed Jasmine's forehead. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you, and I love you. I see, he said after a long moment. I can't say I'm surprised. It's an incredible opportunity. These past weeks, building the bookstore together, planning for its future, it's been the happiest time of my life. Being with you has been something I should have told you days ago, but I was afraid it would influence your decision. She struggled to find the words, like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. Martha had been equally supportive, though clearly sad at the prospect of losing Jasmine, just as their new venture was launching. The bookstore will still be here if you decide to come back, she'd assured Jasmine. The only person Jasmine couldn't bring herself to discuss the decision with further was Grayson. On Friday morning, Jasmine sat at her kitchen table staring at her laptop. Said she'd been thinking about retirement even before the original store was sold. She wanted to make sure Reading Harbor would continue, but she was ready to step back. The paperwork is ready. I was going to surprise you with it at the opening tomorrow. He looked down at his hands. She asked me to buy her out to take over the business entirely. I mean, I bought Reading Harbor, the business itself. That Reading Harbor would continue with or without me, Jasmine challenged. By making decisions about our supposed partnership without consulting me? From Martha, I want what's best for you, even if that means watching you walk away. You kept things from me because you thought you knew what was best. How is that any different from what your father did? I was trying to protect your freedom to choose. I love you for exactly who you are. Grayson flinched as if she'd slapped him. You never trusted I could love you on my own, without your money fixing my problems, without your influence opening doors for me. You had to keep doing those things, even while claiming you wanted me to be independent. I'm nothing like my father, he said quietly. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, dressed for her weekly checkup at the hospital. Have you decided? She asked gently. Behind her, Grayson remained rooted to the spot, watching her go with the knowledge that for all his wealth and privilege, he might have just lost the only thing that truly mattered to him. Why couldn't you trust that I might choose you anyway, without all your behind-the-scenes maneuvering? I didn't want the bookstore to be another factor weighing on your decision. Whatever happened, fix it before you leave for San Francisco. Don't let pride stand in the way of happiness. There's always a give and take, a shifting balance. The question is whether you're both giving and taking with love. Just like when you arranged for my mother's medical care without asking. A courier had arrived with a large envelope addressed to her. "You're still trying to fix things, Grayson. Still trying to control outcomes." Inside was a folder containing legal documents and a letter on Miles Foundation letterhead. But it wasn't signed by Harrison Miles. Another reason to stay if what you really wanted was to go. "No. I need space, to think, to figure out what I really want versus what you've orchestrated for me." Jasmine nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I've established a trust in your name with the Miles Foundation, money that belonged to my mother, which I've always had independent control over. You would have complete editorial control, with the resources to publish the voices you believe deserve to be heard." Jasmine attended, maintaining a professional demeanor as she helped customers and rang up sales. "It's simply my way of ensuring your talent and vision have an outlet, wherever you choose to be. Your path forward should be determined by you alone, not influenced by my presence or my resources." "Said he had somewhere important to be?" Jasmine asked, a sense of urgency rising within her. "No, but he looked resolved, like someone Grayson did the same, the two of them orbiting each other carefully, never quite making direct contact." "What do you mean?" "We already knew you bought the building." "And," Eleanor prompted, "not as a partner but as the sole owner. I've realized that my involvement, however well-intentioned, has compromised your sense of independence. This is my attempt to correct that mistake. I wanted to give you options, not take them away." "I'm going to accept the position," Jasmine said, the words feeling strange in her mouth as if someone else were speaking them. "Whatever you decide, I wish you every happiness and success." Eleanor studied her daughter's face. "But not for your heart." Jasmine smiled sadly. "That's true," Eleanor conceded. After Eleanor left, Jasmine sent the email, accepting the position in San Francisco. Now she just had to tell Grayson. She found him at the bookstore, up on a ladder hanging the new Reading Harbor sign above the entrance. "It looks perfect," she called up to him. Grayson glanced down, his face lighting up at the sight of her. Jasmine looked around at the storefront, at the carefully arranged window display featuring local authors, at the small chalkboard announcing tomorrow's grand opening celebration. "It's beautiful," she said truthfully. "Everything we imagined." Grayson's smile faded slightly as he studied her face. Jasmine nodded, her throat suddenly tight. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They walked to a small park across the street, finding a bench beneath a flowering dogwood tree. "I accepted the position," Jasmine finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I leave for San Francisco in 3 weeks." Grayson was still beside her, his breathing the only indication that he'd heard her. "Grayson," Jasmine began, but he shook his head. "You don't need to explain," he said gently. "I understand why you're going, I really do. But I need you to understand why it's so hard to leave," Jasmine insisted, turning to face him. Grayson's eyes softened. "I feel the same way." "But," Jasmine prompted, hearing the unspoken word in his tone. "But I need to tell you something," Grayson said, his expression turning serious. Jasmine felt a chill of apprehension. "What is it?" Grayson took a deep breath. "I bought the bookstore." Jasmine stared at him, confusion replacing apprehension. "No," Grayson clarified. "You what?" Jasmine's voice rose in shock. "When? Why?" "Last week," Grayson admitted. "Martha came to me." Jasmine struggled to process this new information. "So the partnership we discussed is still valid," Grayson assured her quickly. "I told Martha I wanted you to have an equal stake in the business." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jasmine asked, hurt creeping into her voice. "Because I knew you were considering the San Francisco offer," Grayson explained. Jasmine stood up, needing to move, to think. "So while I've been agonizing over leaving the bookstore, leaving our project together, you knew all along that you'd be fine without me." "That's not fair," Grayson said, standing as well. "I never thought about it that way." "By keeping secrets?" Grayson ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I see how it looks now, but I swear, Jasmine, my intentions were good." "Just like when you got my poems into the Atlantic without telling me first," Jasmine said, connecting the dots. "That's not what this is," Grayson protested. I love you, Jasmine. But you never trusted me enough to make my own decisions with all the information, Jasmine countered. The comparison struck home. Aren't you? Jasmine asked, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Grayson stepped toward her, anguish clear in his eyes. That's not true. I trust you completely. Then why couldn't you let me make my own choices? Jasmine asked, her voice breaking. Grayson had no answer, the truth of her words seeming to hit him fully for the first time. Jasmine wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. I need to go, she said. I can't do this right now. Jasmine, please, Grayson began, reaching for her. She stepped back, shaking her head. Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. The grand opening of Reading Harbour went ahead as planned the next day. Martha, sensing the tension between them, kept shooting concerned glances their way but didn't interfere. Eleanor, however, had no such reservations. You two are being ridiculous, she told Jasmine during a quiet moment. It's not pride, Mom, Jasmine said tiredly. It's about trust, about equality in a relationship. Eleanor sighed. No relationship is ever completely equal, darling. Before Jasmine could respond, there was a commotion at the front of the store. Special delivery for Jasmine Bell, the young man announced. Curious, Jasmine accepted the envelope. It was signed by Grayson. Dear Jasmine, before you make your final decision about San Francisco, there's something you should know. This trust will fund a poetry imprint under the Reading Harbour name. This isn't an attempt to keep you here. The trust exists whether you stay in Baltimore or go to San Francisco. The legal documents enclosed transfer ownership of Reading Harbour entirely to you. I'm stepping away completely. The bookstore is yours to run as you see fit or to sell if you choose. I love you enough to let you go, truly let you go, without strings or safety nets or behind-the-scenes machinations. Always, Grace and Jasmine looked up from the letter, scanning the crowded bookstore for Grayson, but he was nowhere to be seen. He left about 10 minutes ago, Martha said, appearing at her elbow. Did he say where? Martha shook her head. Who'd made a difficult decision and was determined to see it through. Jasmine looked back at the letter, at the legal documents transferring Reading Harbour to her name. Everything she'd accused Grayson of, trying to control outcomes, using his money to fix problems, making decisions for her, he was undoing with this final gesture. The freedom to make her own choices without his influence. He was giving her exactly what she'd said she wanted, complete independence. But in doing so, he was removing himself from her life entirely. Martha asked, gesturing to the crowded space around them. We're in the middle of our grand opening. I need to find him, Jasmine said, suddenly certain. Now. His apartment? Bella, not a restaurant, please, she told the driver. As fast as you can. The harbor where they'd first kissed, back to his father's house. It was early for dinner service, the place nearly empty, but as she peered through the window, she saw a familiar figure sitting alone at a table for two near the window, the same table where she'd mistakenly sat down that night weeks ago. What about the store? Jasmine, what are you doing here? It went straight to voicemail. So you know the bookstore is yours now? This is more important, Jasmine insisted, already heading for the door. Eleanor can help you. I have to go. He didn't notice her until she was standing right beside the table. She raced outside, looking up and down the street for any sign of Grayson. Nothing. She pulled out her phone and dialed his number. Where would he go? On instinct, Jasmine hailed a taxi, but I've had time to think, to really examine what I want versus what I'm afraid of. She squeezed his hand. I was afraid of being unequal in this relationship. Sometimes you've made decisions I should have been part of, but your heart has always been in the right place. She took a deep breath. The truth is, I don't want to go to San Francisco. I don't want you to regret this decision. I want to stay here, with you, building something together, of always being the one receiving while you were always the one giving. But I realize now that I've been giving too. My perspective, my poetry, my way of seeing the world. Things you value as much as I value what you bring. You don't have to do this. We could find a way to make it work long distance. That's who you are, Always finding solutions, always making things work. It's one of the reasons I love you." "You're sure?" he asked one more time. "But this time, I want to be the one who chooses, and I promise to always tell you what I need instead of expecting you to guess. Who sacrifices something valuable for something even more precious? I could open a branch of my foundation in San Francisco." 20 minutes later, the taxi pulled up in front of the Italian restaurant where she and Grayson had first met. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, she whispered, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Grayson was staring into a glass of red wine, his expression distant and sad. Eleanor, now in remission, had taken over managing the cafe section, discovering a talent for business she'd never known she possessed. "The vision and quality of your first anthology impressed our entire editorial board. I love you, Jasmine Bell, and I promise to always include you in decisions from now on. No more behind-the-scenes fixing." This would not require relocation to San Francisco, merely occasional visits for editing and promotion. "We hope you'll consider this offer as a way to expand your reach while maintaining your roots in Baltimore. If this interests you, please contact me at your earliest convenience." "This seat taken?" she asked softly. He looked up, surprise and confusion crossing his face. The wrong table had indeed led her to the right person. And whatever challenges lay ahead, from Harrison's continued disapproval to the day-to-day realities of running a bookstore together, they would face them as equals, as partners, as two people who had chosen each other first. Among the usual catalogues and bills was a thick envelope addressed to her personally. The return address made her heart skip a beat: San Francisco Literary Review. "Fixing a mistake," she said, sitting down across from him. "My mistake this time. Your own collection published by the San Francisco Literary Review and a partnership with Harbor Voices. It's everything you wanted without having to leave. But there's one thing I need to ask you." Grayson's brow furrowed. "I don't understand." Jasmine reached across the table and took his hand. "I got your letter and the documents. Some things really do work out on their own, don't they?" "Ah," Grayson said, his expression carefully neutral. "I don't want it," Jasmine said simply. "Not because I'm choosing you over my career, but because I'm choosing us, together, over a future apart. Some choices once made with the heart couldn't be unmade. I want you to know that this is my choice, made freely and with full awareness of what I'm giving up and what I'm gaining." Grayson looked startled. "You don't want reading Harbor?" "Not if it means losing you," she clarified. "Not if it means you stepping away from something we built together." "But yesterday, you said—" "I know what I said," Jasmine interrupted gently. "And I meant it." Grayson's expression softened. "You've given me more than you know. So have you," Jasmine acknowledged. "And yes, sometimes your way of giving has felt overwhelming." Hope flickered in Grayson's eyes. "What about the poetry editor position? Your dream job?" Jasmine smiled. "Dreams change. They evolve. My new dream is reading Harbor, the poetry imprint you've created, and most importantly, a life with you." "Are you sure?" Grayson asked, still hesitant to believe. "I'm sure," Jasmine said firmly. "But I have one condition." "Anything," Grayson promised. Jasmine pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it on the table between them. It was her acceptance letter from the San Francisco Literary Review. "I want you to tear this up," she said. Grayson looked at the envelope, then back at Jasmine. "I know you could," Jasmine said with a smile. Slowly, Grayson picked up the envelope. In answer, Jasmine leaned across the table and kissed him, pouring all her certainty and love into the gesture. Grayson tore the envelope in half, then in quarters, letting the pieces fall to the table. "And I love you, Grayson Miles," she replied. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, Jasmine felt a sense of rightness settle over her. 6 months later, Reading Harbor was thriving. The poetry imprint, Harbor Voices, had published its first anthology featuring local poets. And Jasmine and Grayson had settled into a rhythm that honored both their individual strengths and their shared vision. On a crisp autumn morning, Jasmine was arranging a new display of poetry collections when the mail arrived. Curious, She opened it to find a letter from Elena Winters. Dear Miss Bell, while we were disappointed by your decision to decline our poetry editor position, we have been following your work with Harbour Voices with great interest. We would like to offer you the opportunity to publish your own poetry collection through our press with full creative control. Additionally, we are exploring the possibility of a partnership with Harbour Voices for East Coast distribution of our publications. Your unique perspective and commitment to authentic voices in poetry align perfectly with our mission. Sincerely, Elena Winters, Editor-in-Chief. Attached was a formal publishing contract for a collection titled The Spaces Between Things, the very poem Jasmine had read to Grayson on the night they first met. Her hands trembling slightly, Jasmine looked up to see Grayson entering the store, carrying 2 coffee cups from the cafe next door. "Good morning," he said, setting her vanilla latte on the counter. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Everything okay?" Wordlessly, Jasmine handed him the letter. As he read, his expression shifted from concern to surprise to genuine joy. "Jasmine, this is incredible," he said, looking up at her. "It's perfect," she agreed, taking the letter back and reading it again to make sure it was real. "What's that?" Grayson asked. "Did you have anything to do with this?" Jasmine's tone was curious rather than accusatory. Grayson held up his hands. "Absolutely not. I swear on everything I love, including you, that this came as a complete surprise to me." Jasmine studied his face and saw only sincerity. "I believe you," she said with a smile. "Some things are meant to be," Grayson agreed, pulling her into his arms. "Like wrong tables and right timings." As they celebrated this new chapter in their story, neither of them noticed the mail carrier deliver a second letter, this one addressed to Grayson, bearing the Miles Industrial logo in the corner. It would be hours before they discovered Harrison Miles' offer to reinstate Grayson as heir to the company, with one condition: that he end his unsuitable relationship immediately. The letter would go unanswered, relegated to the bottom drawer of Grayson's desk. Some offers weren't worth considering, no matter how financially lucrative, and some mistakes, like sitting at the wrong table on a rainy night in a quiet Italian restaurant, turned out not to be mistakes at all, but the beginning of the most important story of all: the end.